we talk about before we go on the live stream? Well, I guess later here today, I am going to go on a hike up Tillamook Head over in Seaside, so that ought to be fun. I haven't been up there in a very long time. So I'm kind of looking forward to doing that with the boys and Sarah, and see if we can't get anybody else to come with us. So looking forward to that. Let's see, what else do we have going on today? I don't know. Probably do some more grilling on the barbecue. I love grilling on the barbecue. Let's see here. What do we talk about today in this video? I want to, I kind of want to bring up what I was talking about in yesterday's video, where I was talking about how it is that you take in the information and what this information will do for you going into the decision making that you have going into the future. So basically, we take in a bunch of information, right? We take in this idea, these thoughts, and then if we get hit with an emotion, then we go into a belief, and then we start putting this belief with evidence, right? And then it eventually turns into something that we are convinced on. And so this is really how a lot of the narratives are built out there that people end up following, is that they get this information maybe from mainstream media, or they hear from somebody on the internet or something like that. And it usually hits them with some kind of like real hard, like, emotion, like, they're either getting rewarded or going to, be hurt or something, right? So this emotion hits them with it. And then on top of that, you start believing a lot of what it is that was said, and then you start finding the evidence up there, right? And this is where like a lot of that narrative is built, right, amongst the mainstream media and things that you hear out there. And so I put that video out yesterday and talked a lot about that. Now, it's funny how when I bring up these sort of topics or something like that, all of a sudden, like, I start finding evidence of it myself, right? So all of a sudden I come up with this article that, was like perfectly fitting for that video in exactly what I was saying. Now, I'm not trying to knock the author of this article. Jeez, I'm having a hard time talking. I believe it was Mr. Scott Sumner. It was a great piece. I mean, everything in it is completely factual and very much of, what I would feel would be an accurate opinion, right? If you were to take in the information that he is talking about. And if you understand it the way that this gentleman is understanding it, it makes total logical sense, everything about it, right? This article. And now basically what he's come to the conclusion is that the Federal Reserve, in this particular article and the evidence that he has gotten, is saying that the 2% target that the Federal Reserve is going for can't really be adjusted up at this point, because it would kind of indicate that the Federal Reserve is failing. And that really that you adjust the inflation target up when you are at a low interest rate, and then you shoot for that target, right? So basically how he described it is that the Federal Reserve is shooting at a barn wall trying to hit a target, but instead of hitting the target, now they just want to draw a target around the bullet hole, right? And that's kind of how his analogy was. And he comes up with all these great thoughts for it inside of this article. Now, I look at it and I'm like, well, the Federal Reserve isn't going for a 2% target. So that's not what's going on here, right? The Federal Reserve is going for a 2% average inflation rate over time. And we don't know exactly what that means, because they don't give us the formula for what the average inflation rate over time is. So now it comes very arbitrary to the Federal Reserve on whether or not we have hit the average inflation rate over time target. So it's not the average, or it's not the target, the inflation target that the Federal Reserve is shooting for. See, typically when inflation would be at 2%, right, they were going for a 2% target, then the Federal Reserve would be hopefully at neutral if they can maintain that. But you'll never be able to maintain neutral, because it's always a fluctuating thing. So what ends up happening is that if the inflation is below the 2% target, then the Federal Reserve would then try to accommodate the consumerism that's taken place out there in order to bring the inflation up to the 2% target. If they went over that 2% target, they would then again adjust monetary policy to tighten it up to bring it down to the 2% target inflation. That's all I got. Get out of here, you turkey. Go on. Get. Yeah, that's what. Go on. They see me up here and they want to hang out. So that's what they were, that's what a lot of people are thinking that the Federal Reserve is doing, is that they are tightening up this monetary policy to bring inflation down to the 2% target. And that is really how the Federal Reserve operated for a very long time. And it's really not like talked about in any other way. Like, most people don't really take on any other kind of strategy other than the Fed is shooting for this 2% target. But we're really, if you go and you look, they're going for a 2% average inflation rate over time, which means that they were going to keep interest rates, meaning that they were going to keep interest rates extra low, extra long for an extended period of time to make up for the fact that inflation had not achieved the 2% target over the previous 10 years. This is what they said, right? Inflation, and even when they, before inflation even started to happen, I was asking, how in the world do you guys plan on doing this? Because this was their strategy before COVID, right? This was their strategy before COVID, is that they were going to go for this average inflation rate because they cannot figure out how it was that they were going to get the 2% target, to be achieved, because they were failing at it miserably, even with quantitative easing 1, 2, 3, and 4 in play. So now, really what ended up happening here is when we think about it, is that the Federal Reserve kept interest rates low for an extended period of time to get the inflation expectation to be well anchored above the neutral interest rate, right? So the neutral interest rate, again, is the interest rate that the Fed is neither accommodating nor restricting the economy, right? So when we look at it from that fashion, right, it's not the 2% target they're going for, it's this 2% average. They kept it low for a long time to get the inflation expectation well elevated, right? And it totally worked. Well, now, because this well elevated inflation expectation now is baked into the economy, right? It's already there, right? It's coming down now due to the indicators that you're starting to see coming out in the mainstream media already. But that is already into the equation, right? That's baked in. So now we have this inflation expectation that's going to be brought into the equation for the inflation expectation going into the future. Now, I know this is getting really confusing here, right? But again, they're going for an average inflation. What that means is that the inflation is going to come down for a very long time while the high inflation is still brought into the equation. You see where I'm getting at? That means that the inflation, or the Federal Reserve and the Fed funds rate, are going to remain elevated during that time. It's very difficult to try and wrap your head around that, right? Because it's easier to understand the 2% target, but it's very difficult to understand the 2% average inflation rate over time and what the Fed strategy is going to be for that, right? Now, that's one of them. We're going to go back and we're going to talk about this again, right? But that was one of them that's within in the article. The other one is, and I cannot believe that. I can believe it. I can, because it's all about the information that we take in and the feelings that we have from it and the evidence that comes from that. But in the article, Mr. Sumner says that inflation can be created by supply chain issues, and that would be transitory, but it has everything to do with the money printer. And I thought, my gosh, dude, you just said it. Like, there is very little doubt in my mind that money printing had a lot to do with the whole inflation scenario that we have experienced. It did not have 100% to do with it, right? It had a lot to do with it. It created a supply chain imbalance, right? Or a supply and demand imbalance through a supply chain shock, right? If you have demand up here and supply down here, you're going to have price increases, right? What they were trying to do is bring demand down to deal with the supply chain, or to try and bring it in with supply, hoping that they would get support from the supply chain. It didn't happen, right? So supply fell along with demand. That's why everybody thought that the Fed failed. But it was definitely a transitory issue that has taken place, and we're now starting to experience it. It was quite evident inside of the lumber market, right? That's why it was easy for me to call it when lumber was at its high, to say that we are going to find lumber back at its normal price. And we definitely experienced it for the last few months. I mean, 2x4s were selling for $3, $3.50 a piece, when at the height of the pandemic, the prices were $13, $13.50 a piece. So it was definitely transitory inside of lumber. And if there was inflation due to all the expansion of money, then how come it left lumber? Right? It just totally vanished out of lumber and a few other items out there. No, it had a lot to do with the supply chain imbalance, and that's really where you have to take a lot of understanding of it, because now, as the inflation is coming down, it doesn't really going to make sense with the money printing argument, because the prices are going to come down, but all that money is still in the system, right? We've only taken out, I forget, what is it, 800 billion, a trillion, something like that. I forget how much the Fed had tried to reduce the balance sheet, but it's not nearly even remotely close to how much they have printed, right? So they've taken a little bit out of the economy, and now look what it has done. Right? So you take all this money out of the economy, and all of a sudden we have this liquidity issue starting to take place all around the world, and then they call it de-dollarization. Right? That's what I find very interesting about it. Again, the information that we take in and how it is that we feel about it. People take in this de-dollarization information and think that, holy crap, the whole world's going to come to an end as they, or at least our world's going to come to an end because everybody is now moving from the dollar into whatever currency they plan on using for world trade. But take a look at what's really happening. I wish I had grabbed the article before I said this, but there's just, go and take a look. Argentina right now, which is like been a nice, nice, what was just like test subject or whatever to follow. Argentina has always loved the dollar. Like, they absolutely use the dollar more than their currency. They would prefer the dollar over their own currency. They prefer the dollar over anything. But now there's a shortage of dollars taking place in Argentina, so they have to move over to the yuan, right? So now they're doing trade in yuan. Even Whirlpool have put out articles saying how they are using. Oh, nice. Are we going to eat the tops?
Tops?
Yeah, the carrot tops.
Yes.
Boy, just pulled some carrots out. So even Whirlpool was talking about how they are going to be using yuan to do their purchases for their production inside of Argentina because the lack of dollars that are available to them. Now, take a look at some of the articles that are now starting to come out. Argentina have borrowed a bunch of yuan. What did they do with them? They went and bought a bunch of dollars with it because nobody wants yuan, right? Everybody wants dollars, and that's the case of it. So even this whole de-dollarization argument really isn't valid. Like, if you take it on as the belief, yes, we are losing our world reserve currency status, no doubt, right? That is happening. I mean, there is no doubt in my mind that the dollar will fail at some point as a world reserve currency, right? That it's almost an inevitable possibility. Like, it's just like it's going to happen. Nobody knows how far out into the future that's going to be. The runner up for its replacement doesn't exist. It is so far off in a distant future, that it's like it's not even something that you can even consider part of the strategy anymore, right? But yet, if you have this narrative that's constantly feeding into you, that you're feeling that there is going to be this, change in the world reserve currency, and you have to start acting now about it, you're taking in the information out of fear. You're putting the evidence to it, and you're going to start changing the subconscious belief, and then you're going to start making decisions and things that are not necessarily going to be accurate to what's going to be happening. Now, it is accurate to you, right? Because now it's put you on that parallel, right? And that parallel of fear, and now I'm not going to be able to succeed, and that everything is going to fail. That's the parallel. They want you, actually, if you were talking about it like a mind control, that's exactly where they want you, is in fear, right? Because if you're in fear, you cannot possibly grow, right? There's just no way about it. And then if they keep us all in fear, then we won't interact with each other on a positive basis and overthrow them, right? So it's critical that they keep us in fear. And most people live that way, right? They're always worried about like the portfolio, worried about anything else going on out there. But again, it's the information and the way you perceive it. I had a guy, gosh, I am just, great coffee today, guys. Okay, so I had a guy mention in the comments, he says, hey, I love that video from yesterday, but you can't possibly just sit there and just manifest money. It doesn't happen like that. And I beg to differ. I absolutely beg to differ because I witnessed it myself, right? Now, I've watched a guy stand motionless, right, with exerting zero energy, saying nothing, and was able to manifest money right in front of him, right? Now, the problem with it is that it's about the confidence that you have that you can do it, right? That it totally exists, that this concept of being able to manifest money right now in front of you without doing anything, without saying anything, right? To have that confidence that can happen is really what it takes, right? Because you're not going to necessarily be happy with your life because of it, right? So people say, I just want money to just manifest right in front of me, right? And you can make that happen. But then you realize when you do that, your life sucks. You have this horrible life that's come from it. And you don't understand like why it is that the world is treating you this way, right? And that's really, when you think about it, that's what's going on, because it's not a matter of having the money. You don't want the money. Money is just nothing, right? It doesn't mean anything. What you really truly want is the feelings that you get from having money, right? The security that comes from it, the comfort that comes from it, the ability to think that I can eat tomorrow all this security kind of thing comes from the having of money, or the adventures that you can take, or the toys you can buy. So it's all this feeling that you have that you want from money. It's not the money itself. Money is just, it's just a thing, right? It's all over the place. It flies everywhere. You know, it's not that, it's truly not that important, right? What's really important is the way that you feel about it when you get this money, right? So, I mean, for example, for this guy who was standing on the street doing nothing with a can standing in front of him, staring down at the ground, was able to manifest money all day long. Boom, dollar after dollar after dollar. He didn't do anything for it, but his life was a horrible place to be, right? Who wants to live on the streets? But he was able to manifest money without ever doing anything, just simply because he had the confidence that it would happen if he just stood there on the street with a can in front of him for people to drop money into, and they did. And it's the same thing. It doesn't matter what it is out there. You can do that exact same thing on all kinds of levels, right? I mean, that's where, like, I think people really kind of misunderstand that they will put themselves on a parallel by the information that they take in, right? Very much like this guy who wishes that people would just give him money, makes it happen, has a horrible deteriorated life, right? I don't know, maybe he has a great life. I just assumed that he had a horrible life by the way he looked. But still, it was happening right there, right? Same thing. That guy could maybe he's really funny. Maybe he could learn to tell jokes. Maybe he could just, like, sit there and earn money by telling jokes. Who knows, right? Who knows where it is that you can generate money from? Everybody has a different parallel that they can land on, from being on the gutter like this dude all the way up to being, talking on stage. Who knows what it is that you can do, but it's just a matter of the things that you believe and the emotions that you put into it and then the evidence that you take to it that'll eventually convince you. All right, I'm gonna go and start reading some questions here, guys. I'm sorry, I really babbled on, didn't I? All right, let's see. Let's go ahead and see that super chat there. Hey, Osama, thank you so much. UE, random question. Do you think are pros cons of living in a small town? I live in a very crowded DC area, pondering relocating to a small town. Well, to be honest with you, I don't really have the experience of living in a major town, other than my local area, which Astoria has like 10,000 people, and there's 30,000 people in the county. So it's not like a huge place to be as far as like a lot of people here. So there's a couple of things that are very positive about living in a small town. One of them is that you know a lot of people. Problem with that is you know a lot of people, right? So a lot of people know who you are. And I've had like situations, say for example, where I needed something in my life, a car for example or whatever. Word of mouth travels so fast that I needed a car, that it all of a sudden, boom, there you are. The network is so tight because it's such a tight community, and then so being able to use that network like that is really cool. Like, people tell me that in the city, you might know a bunch of people, but it's not like the same type of network as far as being in a small community, like you are in a town of like 10,000 people, right? So there's the pros for that. Con part about it, knowing a lot of people, is, for example, I was sitting in a coffee shop discussing a YouTube channel, and the people around who knew who I was or knew who the other person was misinterpreted the conversation, and then rumors started flying out there about things, and it was just like, it was very misunderstood, like aspect of things, and I thought it was kind of funny. The other person maybe didn't, I don't know. But anyhow, that sort of thing ends up happening because of how many people know who you are. Like, I didn't know, like, I looked around the coffee shop, I mean, I recognized people, but I didn't know anybody knew who I was, because you just recognize people from town. So being in a small town like that is, okay. Business, I think, is probably going to be a whole lot easier to deal with a bigger city area. Like, if you have ideas for starting businesses or stuff, you're going to be in a lot more competition, but then you have a lot more access to people with, or the opportunity to access people with money, as opposed to a small town, which you would really, have to find and fit a niche, in order to make it, which, can have its good and bad points to it too. I'm not much of a business operator as far as that goes, or starting businesses and stuff, so I guess I couldn't really give you an example of that, except for I hear about people, like, say, bringing crews from Portland, like construction crews from Portland, down to this particular area because they can't find anybody to work, right? Because everybody is already busy, and the network has already basically occupied the availability of all the carpenters in the area, so they have to find it from outside the source or outside the area, source from outside the area. I gotta slow down. I'm sorry, guys. I gotta slow down. All right. Right on. 189 of you up in here. Okay. That ain't working. That's the way you do it. That ain't working, right? I'm not saying it's like I said. I mean, you can manifest money right in front of you without doing anything, saying anything, exerting any energy, nothing like that. But is it a really good life? No, you got to think about that. Most people who win the lottery, right? They win the lottery and then they just totally deteriorate their life from it. They they end up losing everything on account of it because, again, it's like the feeling that they get from having the money was like overwhelming to them, and they didn't know how to behave from it. And most people end up just losing their money. If you work real hard for your money, and then when you acquire it, then you don't have a tendency to lose it, right? So easy come, easy go kind of thing. And so what am I doing? All right. People just got abused over and over. All right, let me go back up here to the top. All right. First, hello. Hey, Simon. Thanks. All right. XRP, baby. You love that stuff, yeah? All right. Interesting thread of thought. Cognitive associated energy. The bird has economic theories it wants to share. All right. Yeah, well, he's about ready to learn an economic theory here. Go on, get out. Can you guys hear him? It's funny. All right. Hi, Yui. Can you explain how the USD has gone down since you claimed everyone wants the USD? Well, I mean, you got to understand that it's not going to be a one-way street, right? So now when you get the CPI index, when everybody comes out and hears like, oh, inflation's coming down, that means the Fed's not going to be raising rates anymore. Well, all of a sudden you start having market participation inside of that with that idea that there is going to be the lowering of interest rates coming from the Federal Reserve. So when you have an immediate market reaction like that off of that news, it's from the news that's coming out there. It's not the actual economy that's taking place out there. The economy is not the markets, right? And although the dollar is coming down, you have to again understand the idea that the markets are taking on the idea that the Federal Reserve is going to be lowering interest rates. It's not going to happen. Really? You too. I swear. Hold on, guys. Get out. Go on. Get out of here. Get. I swear. They would just stand. Like turkeys are like little like dogs. I kid you not. They would just stand right in front of you all day if they could. They just want to hang out with you. The funniest creatures. So you had. I mean, that's what's really going on. Give it some time, right? Wait till this is the thing about it, right? Everything acts with a lag, right? So right now the Federal Reserve has interest rates at 5.25%, but really, it's what was taking place 3 months, 6 months ago. So really, we're more at like 3 or 4%, right? That's really where the economy is feeling the effects of it. Now, there's more pain to come as the interest rates that are taking place right now will be starting to affect the economy coming into the next 6 months or so. I mean, we don't know exactly how long this lag is. Because of the forward guidance and signaling, a lot of times, a lot of economists are saying that lag period has shortened up quite a bit, right? That the markets are reacting and causing the interest rates to be more in effect quicker because the market participation inside of the idea that the Federal Reserve is going to be raising rates. Does that kind of make sense? So they've been able to shorten that up. Before, people used to have to sit there and wait for what the Fed was going to say. So it's like, oh shoot, they came out today and raised rates, and then all of a sudden the markets had to start reacting to that announcement, right? But now they put the announcement out ahead of time so that the markets can react to it and get themselves prepared for it. There's no shock and awe event that takes place because of it. All right, so now when you got the CPI information that comes out and the Federal Reserve is fighting inflation or not, or whatever it is that your belief is telling you, okay? What a lot of people are anticipating is because that CPI information is starting to bring the inflation scenario down, that the Federal Reserve is going to be following that, and that's not the case. So here in a few months, what we're going to find is that the interest rates that the Federal Reserve, the Fed funds rate, are going to be elevated. and the inflation expectation is going to fall. That is going to raise the real interest rates. And that right there is going to be very painful. Now, if we think about like what the Treasury is doing right now, right? The Treasury is loading up on a bunch of cash, and people don't really understand why. Like a lot of people will come up with their conclusions or whatever, and they have their reasons for it. And again, it's belief and the feelings that you have from it, and the evidence that you put towards it. But my belief towards it is that the Treasury, right, who made the announcement of doing bond buybacks in 2024, Wall Street Journal, Financial Times, Bloomberg, all these, all the major players as far as news outlets put out the article on the same day, and then there's been crickets about this particular topic ever since. So in my mind, it was like, this is not something that has gone away. This is something that they have chosen not to talk about because they don't want you or me or anybody else to put this into our narrative that the Treasury is going to be buying back bonds due to the fact that there is a liquidity issue taking place within the bond market. That right there is going to be a very painful experience for a lot of people that I don't think are ready or prepared to deal with. And again, it's because of that rising of the real interest rates. When the inflation expectation starts to fall, even if the Federal Reserve was to maintain rates at where they are at, or even drop them a little bit, it's still that real interest rate is starting to grow right there, and that is going to be painful for the economy. You guys understand like the real interest rate? Like I'm sure you guys do, but let me just explain it for those who don't. The real interest rate, if you are an investor who is anticipating a 2% interest rate and you have an inflation expectation of 1%, the real interest rate is going to be 1%, what it is that you feel that you are going to get after the inflation. If you can then lower the inflation expectation, you will raise the real interest rate to 2%, what the investor believes that they will get from their investment. Does that make sense? So if you can lower the real or the inflation expectation, you will raise the real interest rates. And that's exactly what happened right towards the end of Trump's administration, like the last year and a half of it, or about 18 months before, before Biden took office. He was out there screaming about how the Federal Reserve should be printing money and taking interest rates into negative territory. He was saying there was no inflation out there. He wasn't really wanting them to do any of that stuff. He was just trying to lower the inflation expectation. Totally worked, right? And raise the real interest rates that were happening at the time. Then when the Fed starts the stimulus programs, right, they were pretty much out of room. Like typically the Federal Reserve would want to drop interest rates around 5%, but they were at when just before the pandemic kicked in, they started dropping interest rates. A lot of people don't remember this, right? And they think about the pandemic induced recession, but it was a recession that was already kicking in the gear. The Federal Reserve was already preemptively trying to stop it from happening by dropping interest rates, but it wasn't going to work because they couldn't drop interest rates enough. They had the Fed funds rate at 2.5%, which means that dropping interest rates was not going to be very effective for stimulating the economy. Typically, they would need to drop that around 5%. When they drop at 5%, that would really spark people's interest in going out there and buying houses and cars and going on vacation and taking out all this debt. But when you drop at 2.5%, it doesn't really push the people out there to go do it. So they knew it was going to come from fiscal stimulus. And this is all stuff that they said before the pandemic took place. And I'm like, what are you going to do? Have a bunch of government spending on what? Right? What are you going to spend a bunch of government? And then boom, pandemic. Oh, of course, right? Why wouldn't it? Right? That's obviously what's happening here now. So all this fiscal stimulus comes out of the government with all the reasonings in the world and the unusual and exigent circumstances that gives the Federal Reserve all these lending facilities to go ahead and just pump a bunch of money into the economy from every direction that they could possibly do it. And now here it is, right? You got this inflation scenario that starts to take place at the exact same time that you had this, severing of the supply chain. I don't know where I was going with all that. Man, I rambled that day. All right. Hey brother, love your videos. Been subscribed since you were at 1200. Missed the videos of the river. Me too. I'm starting to think more about what it is, the energy that I was putting into these videos, because when I started this channel, I didn't really have a whole lot of expectations of anything out there. I was just putting out videos. I kind of just really considered it my own personal journal, and I didn't really think about what people were saying or even if they were watching or anything else. And as the channel grew, I just thought, man, don't stress it. Don't just go with it, right? Don't worry about the money. It'll come. Don't worry about anything else. And the channel was so much fun. Lumber was taking off. Everything was like just, really just benefiting the channel in every direction, hooking up with George Gammon and all this other stuff. It was like this awesome parallel. And then shortly after buying the house, things like it was different for me, right? All of a sudden it went from like a feeling of getting to do this to having to do this, right? And I'm really trying to find, bring that back into, no expectations from it again, and just doing the videos that I really want to do, instead of with the idea that I'm trying to make money. Because, even the idea of doing the sponsorships and stuff like that, I feel like it, like just everything about the channel wasn't what had originally felt. You know what I'm saying? And so that's really where, like, I think, like, I'm trying to get back to, and doing videos along the river, I think would be a perfect way to get back to that, because it was fun. I love doing those river videos. Hey, go hit the like button, guys. We got 82 likes, 211 people up in here. We can certainly get more people to hit that like button, get this video spread around the internet a little bit more. All right, Johnny Cash, double good show, cheers. Ocean, can you explain how the 10-year yield has dropped from 4% to 3.8? That isn't American citizens pushing it down, that's for sure. Why not? I mean, when you see yields fall, right? That's the bonds. Okay, so yields work opposite to bond prices, right? So as yields fall, bonds go up in price. And so when you have like demand for bonds, people are looking for them, then what you're going to find is the price of the bonds are going to go up and the yield is going to fall. If you have an inflation expectation that is beginning to fall, like we had out of the CPI, right? Again, this is like, people look at this information, it hasn't really affected them yet. Right? I mean, there's no real change from yesterday to today, right? So all of a sudden, this information now hits them. They have this belief, the evidence is there, and so now they start taking action from it. And they don't feel that there's going to be as much inflation coming into the future, which means that the price of the bond is going to go up, with the idea that the interest rate that it's going to pay will be sufficient enough to deal with the inflation expectation that is coming. Does that make sense? So people are looking for that returned investment, right? They're looking for that fixed income. And at 3.8, with the inflation expectation that they have, they're willing to take on that risk, right? And say that, yeah, that price and that yield is good enough for me. Now, I know a lot of people are going to argue with that and say, no, it's all manipulation coming out of the banks and the Fed and all this other stuff, and yield curve control and all kinds of stuff like that. All right, that's okay. Yeah, I believe all that stuff. So if that's the case, and that's what you believe, and that's the evidence that you have for it, then that's the parallel you're on, and that's the decisions that you're going to be making from the subconscious, right? I personally am like thinking, okay, well, I'm going to take on the idea that this is market participation that is happening within it. And, if it isn't, then I'm going to have to see evidence that doesn't, and I'm not going to take it to the belief of being completely convinced by it, right? Because I don't really know exactly. But to me, that would make the most logical sense. So, am I set in that? No. All right. Hey, thanks for hitting that like button. We got 105 of you hit up now from 82. That was awesome. Thank you. All right. I'm going to go hit those super chats here in just a second. All right. The Fed's buying everything, brother. That's, again, right? If that's the belief and the evidence, right, that you put into it, then that's the thing that you're going to be convinced on. And then then what you're going to be doing is your subconscious is going to be making decisions believing that the Fed manipulates everything. I'm going to try and believe something different, because the information that I take in, I want it to benefit me, right? I don't want it to live in fear. And if you have it with this manipulation of 100% of everything, you're living in fear, and then it won't benefit you, and that's the parallel you're going to be on, right? You know your stuff, sir. Thought me a lot. Very appreciative for your teachings. Well, thank you very much, Adwan. Excuse me if I mispronounced that, but thank you very much for that. I really appreciate you. All right, inflation ain't going down, bro. I disagree. All right. I mean, again, if you don't want it to go down, then you will see all the evidence, right? You don't believe it'll go down. I right? You can find all the evidence of it, and then you'll be convinced of it, and that will be the parallel you're on, right? Totally. Like I wasn't convinced of it when lumber was at 1,700 per thousand. I had no proof anywhere out there that lumber was going to come down in price. Zero proof of it, right? But I knew from the things that I had learned about the supply chain and what had taken place prior to the pandemic, and all the shortages and all the mill curtailments and all the inventory depletions that had taken place prior to the pandemic, right? Then gets COVID, and COVID lockdowns and everything only exacerbated the problem. It was easy for me to say, hey, these mills are in full operation and we are going to see an inventory overload, right? And that's exactly what happened, right? All of a sudden we had oversupply, or undersupply to oversupply, and prices, boom, crashed. Easy for me to predict. I wish I knew how to make money at that. Other people made money off that information, that exact information, right? And I'm sitting over here making YouTube videos, could have been a millionaire, you know? All right. In other words, you need 16% deflation to counter the inflation to get to 16 average. I have no idea, because we don't know how average inflation is targeted, right? So you can't say that it needs to be at 16% because you wouldn't know. Right? We don't know how long, how far back did they start it in the pandemic? Did they start it the day they announced it, that they stopped saying anything about it? I mean, look at Jerome Powell's comments in the Fed statement. Until they achieve their inflation goal over time, or whatever, I forget, but they very carefully say it. They don't ever use the words average inflation rate, right? They say their inflation goal over time. I'm starting to think UE works for the Fed. No. The problem that most people have with my understanding of the economy and things is that I didn't take in information from somebody else, right? I took in information from all sources. I took in information a lot directly from the Federal Reserve. If I wanted to know what the repo facility was all about, I didn't listen to somebody else talk about the repo facility. I went right to the Federal Reserve documents and read about the Federal Reserve's repo facility, and then put out a video about that. It's called Things Are Changing. It's one of, I mean, that video right there, I don't know why I go back to it so many times, but it was one of those videos that I had put out that I didn't even understand why I was putting it out at the time, that ended up being one of the most important videos, information that I could have ever possibly put out ahead of time. But yet nobody saw it. It got like and even now I think it only has like 3,000 views to it. And it's not important anymore because everybody knows what the repo facility is. But at the time, nobody knew it. And it wasn't a standing repo facility. And I thought, man, how is it you guys plan on getting this thing to be standing? Because they said it. They said, we want this thing to be a permanent fixture for the Federal Reserve's toolbox. But it isn't there yet. They don't really have any reasonings for it. Right? September 2019, boom, huge corporate tax payment deprives all the banks of liquidity. And now there's this huge issue within the overnight banking system, right? The overnight lendings between the big banks. Interest rates shoot up to 10%. Everything was going to start freezing up the next day. And the Federal Reserve says, oh, no. See, we got this emergency repo facility. Let's just go ahead and just fire that thing up, and we'll do this non-QE thing. And it never went away, right? And now it's a permanent fixture for the Federal Reserve. And I thought, wow, how is it that wow, that was pretty good, right? Nobody else saw that. I don't know, maybe other people did. I don't really remember anybody else talking about it. But that was very important information, and that was in my subconscious the entire time. I'm like, how the hell you guys plan on getting this thing to be a standing repo facility? Boom, September 2019. I was like, oh, you guys are good. You know? So it's not me wanting to work for the Fed. It's me listening to the Federal Reserve and saying stuff about the Fed that nobody else talks about, right? It's because they put the information out, right? But then they don't talk. Like, the information is for the elitist. I think you guys should probably know that too, right? They can't put out a memo or an email or a statement to the elitist saying, hey, guess what we're about ready to try and do, right? They have to put it in the wording, and they put it in such a way that the lingo is so confusing to the average person that they won't ever get it. Right? You got people who truly understand the economy, like Mr. Scott Sumner, right? Obviously he knows, right? He knows how this economy works. He understands the Fed funds rate, he understands supply chains, he understands all this other stuff, right? But the belief that he was given, right, from the universe that he was observing, has put him on a parallel that is very different from the one that I am on when it comes to what the Federal Reserve strategy is. We are not thinking the same thing. We are not going to make the same decisions, right? Not to mention, we're not even in the same position in life in general, right? He doesn't work at a lumber yard. I imagine he doesn't work at a lumber yard, right? And, what he's doing with his investments is probably, pretty critical to, the carrying on of his life and the standard of living that he has. I don't have that, right? I don't have that fear. I don't have that, like if I lose, I have very little to lose, right? I don't have investments. Like I do have some investments, but even if they went to zero tomorrow, it would be kind of heartbreaking, but it's not going to destroy my life or anything like that. It ain't that much money, And so, it's a much different life and understanding of the information, and that's really where it's very critical. Again, like I think that's the point that I'm really trying to put out there is like how you receive this information and what you believe from it is going to be very critical to how you conduct yourself going into the future and the future that then lies ahead of you. All right. Let me go find those super chats. Excuse me, guys. Gosh. There we go. Hey, thank you very much, Rusty Dollar, for the $19.99, man. Thank you. Not your problem, $1.99. Thank you very much. Went to the Goonies Museum film. Pretty cool. I haven't seen the Goonies Museum. Wasn't there another one? Oh, yeah, there it is. All right. That dude over there, O2. Thank you very much for the $5. I'm listening in the background. I just noticed the dice. Very nice touch. Yeah, well, I know you guys have been missing the dice. So, and then I also, this is the world's coolest bingo collar, right? Got my shirt on. A fan sent me that. So, right, if you guys are in the Astoria area on Sunday evenings, go by the Workers and you can hang out and watch me call bingo. It's great fun. All right, let me go back up there to the... All right. Money don't mean nothing because the chicks are free. The worth of money won't change until society changes. People just get abused over and over. Oh, we already did this one. Okay. I thought those sounded familiar. Okay. What's your go to the laws of attraction source of reading? Okay. What's your go-to law of attraction sources of reading? So a lot of times, if you understand like how Google operates, it's actually pretty useful. And so like I know it sounds very strange, but literally just by some of the things that you were thinking about and you go messing around on Google, maybe put in a few, Google searches, click on a few articles or something like that, it will very much pick up your subconscious and start feeding you things that are along the lines of what you're thinking, saying, and stuff like that. Not to mention it's picking up all the ambient stuff that's happening around you. Right? So I try to manipulate that Google feed. A lot of times I will put in there, like, say for example, I don't know, like I've I put in all kinds of stuff. But normally I will put in like, say, things that are not quite normal for, people to look. Like not looking for information that's already being stated. Like especially when it came to like lumber mills, like, as lumber was falling, I would look for like, say, information on, mills that are like being built, at the same time that lumber prices were falling, because I think that would be more prevalent information for what's coming into the future, right? It's not necessarily what's happening now. What's happening now is, or like if you're reading it, it's already taken place, right? And so by the time you're reading it and then acting on that information, it's old news. It's like you're already too late for the information. So reading information today that is very much against the narrative, or maybe counterintuitive to what is happening, is, in my opinion, a predictor of the future. And if you can, like, say, find these, particular events that are taking place and then look for, like, the least resistance to that, then you can kind of like understand where things are going to go sometimes, right? So that's a lot of times, I know this is very vague on a lot of stuff, but when you start doing that and you kind of have that mindset when you're going into Google, then you can start getting feeds from a lot of places. I have a tendency to, like, I don't necessarily go to like places like Bloomberg or the Wall Street Journal or stuff. but I will look for those particular articles with headlines that I'm interested in. Really? Come on, guys, get out of here. Go on. Get. Okay, sorry guys. So they just end up crapping everywhere. So that's where like a lot of it comes from. But then I don't necessarily like discredit any particular source, right? So if somebody has a particular blog, like, you know, maybe just for example, Scott Sumner, you know, I give that, you know, article a lot of credit. I mean, I read the article. It very much, you know, falls in line with a lot of people's thinking and beliefs and understanding of what's happening within the economy. There's, you know, nothing in there to say that it's unfactual, you know, by any means. I mean, except for the fact that it's misunderstanding between the 2% average inflation rate and a 2% target. But again, like a lot of people have this thought, right, that it's a 2% target that the Federal Reserve is shooting for. So, you know, again, like how you perceive this information is very different from, you know, everybody can read the same thing, right, and then interpret it differently. I believe that ain't working. Okay. Easier to find veterinarian in the country. Hopefully you only have pink eye or sores on your udder. Interesting. Okay. Buy the chips first. Here, is there a way to sustainably grow the economy with less dive into luxuries? I don't know. Like, I mean, I don't try to say here's how you fix the economy, because I think that's a delusional thought. Any politician who comes up and says I can tell you how we can make this economy fixed or work or be better or whatever, I think is just, you know, selling you something. Um, hey, get out of here. Oh, fuck, you were scared. Hold on. Get out of here. Yeah, that's right. Isn't it fun? Okay. So, I guess you this. Oh, now I forgot the question. What was that? Oh, the getting into luxuries. So I don't think there's any real way of like say maintaining an awesome economy, because an economy is awesome for somebody no matter what the economy is, right? And it's just the position that you have put yourself in during that time. Maybe your misunderstandings of the future, or just lack of understanding altogether. You know, and then not being confident in you know, in your thoughts and beliefs of what is happening here. I mean, if you live in fear, that fear is not confident, right? Fear is just like I have no idea. I'm living in uncertainty, and then I'm not feeling good about what's going to happen here. Well, then your subconscious is going to feed you that kind of life, you know. If you know, living in a mindset that all this information is good information. It's just how I interpret it, right? It's the meaning that I give it, and then the usefulness that I find behind it. That's really what it's all about. I mean, it's easy. It's something interesting about, like, I've even found it myself here on YouTube, just simply with the titles of the video. Like, if I title a video describing something about how everybody is going to lose everything they have and crash and die tomorrow, then it will get a lot of views. Like, it will get a lot of views just simply off the title of it, right? The information in it could be like the same information that I've been putting out in other videos or whatever, but because I didn't title those with some clickbaity catchy title, it doesn't get the views, right? So this is kind of interesting. How about, how do you make money on YouTube, right? Well, you scare the hell out of the people. Well, how do you scare the hell out of the people? Well, you tell them how they're going to lose everything that they have inside of everything they've ever worked for in their entire life. And man, is that easy to do, right? So I could sit out here and take the same information and then describe it to you in a way that just absolutely just like overloads you with this feeling of uncertainty and fear and like, oh God, what am I going to do? And then you're going to be stuck on it wondering, you know, what is it? What do you have next, man? What is it that's going to kill me next, you know? And that and people get addicted to it. I don't even understand like how this happens, right? You know, but it does. Where they should be looking for information that says, how am I going to get a benefit? How do I invest? How do I, you know, start businesses? How do I do all this other stuff? Instead, they're watching stuff on how they're going to die, right? And then not using that information to benefit themselves. They're using it to scare the hell out of themselves and be stimulated from that fear or something. I don't know, but it happens, right? So like knowing that takes place. I try not to be so clickbaity with my titles, but to be very descriptive with my titles. But doing that, I don't get the attention, right? And so without the attention, you don't get the money. And again, I'm back to like, what did I start this channel for? Don't worry about the money, right? Go back to just making videos that you feel are most appropriate. And that's what I'm going to try and do. This is like, and that's why I'm out here today. And did I get another super chat? Let's go find that. Gosh, look at all these comments. Awesome. All right, not your problem. $4.99. Thank you so much, man. Oregon Film Museum in Astoria is where the different scenes from the Goonies were shot. Oh. At the old county jail. Oh, yeah, that's right. Okay, I forgot about that. It's right next to the, right near the post office. The post office, the county courthouse, the Clatsop County Sheriff's Department, they're all like kind of like within a little couple block radius there. All right, I agree. It's your view of the economy. If you knew anyone that grew up during the 1929 Depression, you don't spend like us millennials. And and again, that's due to a scarcity mindset, right? So here you have two people, like a millennial and somebody who went through some really hard times and economic times, maybe a depression type era kind of stuff. Maybe they grew up in a country that, was, very, suppressed or whatever. And if you never had that feeling, that belief, that understanding of it, then you wouldn't see an economy that does that, right? But having experienced it in a time, then you can see evidence of it all around, right? And you can pinpoint it. You can say, there it is, there it is, there it is, there it is. And then pretty soon you have this belief, this is what's taken place because of the evidence that you can find from the thoughts that you had and the emotions that you had attached to it. And if you grew up in a very difficult time, then you have a lot of emotional, like, probably trauma or something else that is like going to affect your subconscious decisions. And when you find evidence of it taking place all over, then that's the way you're going to end up living and believing. And that's why you find such a mindset difference between like a millennial and somebody who went through like a depression era type of event. And the millennial, like, I mean, I'm not saying this for all millennials, but a lot of millennials might have been coddled throughout their entire life where everything was handed to them and they don't understand how it is that food isn't just a natural right and how healthcare isn't just a natural right and how, having a house isn't just some sort of right. Like these are not rights, these are privileges, and you have a right to go and attempt to acquire those things. Right? That's where your rights lie, but you don't have a right to any of that stuff. You don't have a right to make anybody else work, right? You don't have that right, or even access to somebody else's work. Okay? And that's really where, like, I think a lot of people end up getting confused by it. Depression era people do not have that concept that they have a right to anything because they have already been deprived, right, of everything that they've had except for their real rights, which is the attempt to go and get the things that they truly need. That's their right. Now, everybody else out there, so handed everything that they forgot or just don't even understand what rights are, or they've taken on this belief because of the emotional attachment that they had to it and all the evidence that has ever been in their life on how they were ever handed everything has now left them on a parallel in which that's what they believe, that everything should be just handed to them or something. And I'm not saying that about you or anybody else. I'm just saying this could be a thought that's out there. I just live life like it was my last day of life. Well, that's really the key to a lot of happiness out there, or at least enjoyment or content, is to really just experience everything or take on the feeling of experiencing it for the first time, right? No matter what it is. Like, it's hard to have the experience of doing this for the first time, doing a live stream, right? But I could take on the feeling, no, this is the first time that I'm really doing it with the conscious thought that you are doing it for the love of doing videos, and take on that sort of energy and feel like that for the first time. And it's just like, okay, so now I got a different energy that's coming off of it, right? And I think you guys can feel that too. I just love Blast Rooster, inside, outside. It's good to seek and command a good blast. Would be in a scenario of too much money chasing too few goods, a scenario we have been through before. Well, okay, let's think about it. Let's think about the inflation scenarios that really hit the United States that were pretty dramatic back in the day. Like World War, a lot of times people will refer back to World War II, they will refer back to the late 70s, right? And two great examples of inflationary scenarios that were taking place here in the United States. Now, both of them very much apply to the type of scenario that we have experienced just recently. Hey, what's up? You can come out. So, are you trying to sneak? It's cool. There's two different scenarios that were taking place, right? So, like World War II, this created an inflation scenario due to the supply chain imbalances, right? Now, all the supply went to the war effort. Now, the major difference between, like, say, what took place in World War II with the supply going to the war effort is that it actually got consumed by the war, right? Which left the supply demand imbalance, pretty much within the system. It wasn't like there was a bunch of, I mean, not saying that money printing or, debts and stuff like that taken out from other countries. Okay, all that stuff had to play into it. But really, it was the consumption of the war taken away, depriving all the stuff that was out there. All the manufacturing was going to war effort, stuff like that, right? So it all got consumed by the war. This created this huge imbalance with it. Now, when we think about the 1970s, this was a lack of confidence within the dollar itself, right? Very much like we had experienced during the pandemic, we had a supply chain breakdown, kind of like a supply imbalance, very much like the World War II effort. And then with the 70s, with the lack of confidence within the dollar, I mean, we severed this, the gold standard, we severed the gold from the dollar. Countries around the world were like, screw the US, you guys are a bunch of jerks. And they were basically going to get out of the dollar. Everybody was opening up like Swiss franc accounts and stuff like that, or Swiss banks accounts, storing their money in Swiss francs, right? And so this is really, we talked about this just recently, and this is where the Carter administration had to issue out bonds that were due in a foreign currency. They were due in German marks and Swiss francs. And so even like everybody was losing confidence within the dollar. It didn't necessarily, and that's what was creating the inflation scenario back in the 70s. So right now, or what we just went through, was kind of a combination of both, right? We had the supply chain breakdown and we had this loss of confidence within the dollar and all this money printing thing that's happening. So that when you understand it from that fashion, right, then it starts to make the picture look a little bit different as far as what we have experienced today. And no, I mean, as far as too much money chasing too few of the goods, yeah, if the money is actually chasing the goods, that's the difference, right? Because quantitative easing 1, 2, 3, and 4 put a bunch of reserves in the banking system, and that didn't start chasing goods and services until it was actually lent into the system, which is actually a deflationary scenario when you think about it, because at the end of it, you have to pay back all that debt plus interest, meaning that you have to postpone consumption, work extra hard, and pay off those debts while not consuming. And that's the deflationary scenario that comes from an overindulgence into debt, right? Now, I don't know. Where was I going? I was just babbling. I guess I should stop there. Cortisol addiction. People who are gambling addicts are actually addicted to losing. Huh. All the stock market is people gambling other people's future investments in retirement. It's the chase, Dan. Just seeing green, I think, naturally drives need for chance that is gambling. Now the red mostly see when people lose, I think, drives people to want to get back. All right, I'm a millennial. Both parents died, grew up on the streets, never had anything handed to me. I'm not. That's a tough case for you, bro. And I'm not trying to knock, your life or anything like that. But that's generally probably not how most people lived, right? And so you're in a very, different situation than generally speaking. Not a fan of the board brushing of millennial Simon. Oh God. Okay. It's funny. I grew up in an area where I didn't have a cell phone, right? I actually had to go outside and play with sticks and stones, right? And we got hurt and broke our bones and did stuff like that, like crashed our bikes. And I'm not saying that stuff doesn't happen today, but we didn't play on computers. We didn't have video games. We didn't have any of that stuff. When we watched a movie, we got to relive that movie in our head because we weren't going to get to see it again, right? So when we played that, when we were outside playing, we were playing from imagination and stuff that we were coming up with on our own. Now, I'm not saying that stuff doesn't happen today, but there's a very different mindset that takes place from somebody who grew up like that as opposed to somebody who grew up with all the access to all the information and every bit of stimulus that you could ever possibly have ever wanted in your life free to you, right? I didn't grow up with that. There was a very different mindset from it. I'm not trying to rake you over the boards or whatever, I'm not trying to do any of that stuff. I'm just trying to describe the very different scenario. Here's a difference. People who are from my generation don't know that they could go out there and just easily make money off the internet, right? They don't even know, like, there's still people like who are my age who don't even want to, like, can't operate a cell phone. They get mad at it and stuff like that, right? This is the mindset difference. Your capabilities as a millennial to make money now on the internet is so much better and easier than any other generation ever had it. I mean, do you not understand how, like, awesome of a position that you're in comparatively to what I grew up with? We had to mow lawns for money, right? That's how we made money. We didn't go and sell stuff on Amazon, right? We didn't go and start up a Phil by Amazon affiliate programs kind of stuff. Like, this is all new that never existed to my generation ever, right? So you guys have it pretty damn good, comparatively. I mean, when I went toward a job, when I was in high school, I got a job making $4.75 an hour. All my friends were envious of me because I was making 25 cents over minimum wage. Think about that, right? Think about that for a minute. When I graduated high school, my wife and I, we had part-time jobs, had rented an apartment before we graduated high school. We had jobs, we had cars, we had insurance, we had, a place to live. Right? And we did that. We left high school and was on our own the day that we graduated high school. How many people do that? Right? Very different mindset that's taking place here. It's not the same place, right? I get it. Don't think I'm raking you over the coals. Right? I'm not. All right. Human sacrifice, dogs and cats living together, mass hysteria. God, I loved it. I watched Ghostbusters the other night. In fact, I watched Ghostbusters last night. Each generation has their fault. Absolutely. Should be a good video title. All right. I get you, E. Wise thoughts you have. Well, I appreciate it. And again, it's not, it's all about, the meaning that you put behind the thoughts and beliefs that you have. And I'm starting to learn this a lot more. It can really guide your life, right? That's where, like, if you really want to know how to make it, like on YouTube, everybody has information that is, so you know better than anybody. Like, you might work on fishing, mechanics, like woodworking, whatever it is, right? It doesn't, you have some sort of information that you do that is better than somebody else's. Maybe you understand sports statistics or something like that. If you have information and you have attention, you can make money. It's simple as that, right? And say even coming out here on YouTube, right? If you put out information, if you are putting out useful information, if you are being genuine and authentic with your information and not trying to be manipulative and whatever, then what the universe will do is start providing you with all the abundance that you need to do that, right? The universe wants you to succeed. And most people just end up putting in their head that it doesn't, and that everything is against them. And then their subconscious will show them all the evidence and everything that says this is how come your life sucks, right? And then you'll live a life that sucks. But if you have all the evidence in the world that says, no, man, you have all the opportunity and all the options and everything is there in abundance for you to just go and take and just go and look for it, and you start finding it and you start seeing evidence of it, then you start living that life. You wonder how it is that some people are lucky. They're not lucky. It's all probabilities, right? They just make it more probable for them than anybody else, and they don't deny themselves that probability, right? To say, like, oh, I don't have time to start a YouTube channel, or I don't know if anybody would ever listen to me. I don't know, like, I'm up with all these damn excuses for it, and then they don't ever start it. And that's the reason why. It's because they just don't feel they could. Yeah. Go on. Can you hear them? They're just all huddled up right there, just sitting right at the edge. All right, can you explain how a CBD, central bank digital, negative interest rate would not create asset inequality bubbles? It's because in order for that to really work, you would have to change the way the monetary system is really kind of conducted. It would be a lot of taxing of the rich is really what ended up happening. It would involve UBI, where everybody would get this universal basic income because it basically you would have to have money injections into the system to force people into spending money. And then at the same time, to prevent the asset prices from just exploding, they would have to take that money right back away from the rich with incredibly high taxes. And so that's how they would do it. Now, I'm not saying that's the case, and you just asked me my theory or opinion on it. That's what I would feel would come from it. I already know Billy the Good Guys lost World War II. I had an Atari 2600, bro. Yeah, I have an Atari. I have an old Atari game. Gosh, I got it at a yard sale and it was still in the original box. And that was what's cool about it. I don't know what I think I still have it anyway. I think you don't know what a millennial is. A person born between 1981 and 1995. Yeah. I get it, man. Listen, there was a big difference. When I graduated high school, the internet was just getting to the point that people were using it, right? I mean, the internet had already existed for a while, right? But people were just getting to the point of using it. I was in high school, right? When a laser printer was able to print out cheat sheets this small, right? Before, cheat sheets were huge. They came out on this big printer, like, and it printed out text that had a cheat. You know what a cheat sheet is? Cheat sheet is the answers on a piece of paper that you use to take a test that the teacher doesn't know you have, right? And we had it on big giant sheets, but when laser printers came out, we could get these cheat sheets on tiny, tiny, itty bitty, tiny, like, fortune cookie size sheets. Right? That was the difference. We didn't have access to things like that before, right? There's a huge difference inside of it, right? Even just that short distance, right, between, because I'm right there at the cutoff. Everything changed so much dramatically. We didn't go to college. We did go to college, but it wasn't pushed upon my generation to go to college. That wasn't they encouraged it. It was heavily encouraged, but it wasn't pushed, right? Not like I imagine a lot of millennials ended up facing. It was a huge difference. It's not the same. I'm not talking about just the technology and the Atari games that you grew up with. I'm talking about the mindset that was very different from your generation to from the previous. Generation X is forgot about. Nobody even realized we even exist. And it's amazing how many people within the Generation X waited till they were in their mid to late 30s to have children. Isn't that strange? It's like all my friends, we all have kids who are 5, 6, 7, 8 years old, or even younger, some of us. That wasn't the previous generation didn't do that, right? The previous generation had kids earlier. Just good to hear both sides of the positive and negatives of the generation is all. Glad you're provided the other side. Yeah, well, it's all about the information and the way you see it and the meaning that you give it, right? If you give it the meaning that I hate millennials or something like that, that's your own understanding of it. I didn't say that. I think you guys have a great advantage and provide a wonderful awesomeness to this society, right? Music and entertainment that comes from it. I don't understand a lot of the music comes out today, but it is kind of catchy in a lot of ways. Yeah, I didn't have a cell phone or an internet really until teenage years. Until teenage years? I didn't even carry a cell phone until, well, I did have a cell phone for a little while, but I got rid of my cell phone when I started when I got access to the internet and started reading up more on, New World Order stuff. I was just like, oh, I'll get rid of all this surveillance stuff. I ain't carrying a cell phone. I ain't doing any of that thing. And so I didn't really start carrying a cell phone again until after Edward Snowden came out with all the dropping of information that he did. All right. Well, you could get anything you want then. You can. Yeah. It was funny. I hung out with a guy who literally would get anything he wanted. I have never seen anybody like this guy. I've never been anybody like him. And I remember one day, he picked up his cell phone and he showed it to me. He says, you ever seen one of these things? He says, anything that you could ever possibly have ever wanted exists out here, right? You just got to go get it. And I'm like, yeah, but, and he was like, no, yeah, but. He was just like, it's right there, go get it, right? And I would watch that guy anything he wanted. He would go and find it. And I watched how he do it. Really, again, it's all about probabilities, right? He will sit there and scroll Craigslist or Facebook marketplace sites or whatever, and find all these items that he knew of value and that had a good price, and then he would go and try and haggle them down to get the most ridiculously low deal. And he says, like, most people just pass it up. They won't take the bait. But he says 1 out of 100, 1 out of 50, or whatever will take your incredibly ridiculously low deal that you are offering for their item, and there it is. Right now you have it, and you just have to be, vigilant and constant about that. And he was good at it. I mean, it blew me away, the stuff that he would come up with. He bought a truck one day. I watched him buy a truck, was cleaning it up, got it, somewhat running, and sold it later that afternoon for like $400 or $500 profit. I was just amazed, And he would do it all the time. All right. Don't you wish that the education system taught us more about economics? Um, I have two schools of thought on that one. I'm not necessarily of the mind that I think that we should have everybody that aware of economics. Um, Almost kind of like the bear coming into the camp kind of attitude. I mean, those who choose to take their time to learn and understand so that they can better themselves, I think should do it. As far as teaching the kids, I think the entire system would fail to exist if we were to teach the kids exactly how this economy works. I just don't think it would be in the same economy, right? Um, just simply because we would not be making the decisions that would allow it to happen. So, I mean, I think those who are watching the channel and those who have interest in it should absolutely teach their kids and everybody they know, and encourage everybody they know to learn as much as they possibly can about the economy. But as far as teaching the kids how the economy works, I think it would completely destroy this monetary system, and we would have to have something completely different. And I'm down for it. I am. I'm down for a gold standard, Bitcoin standard, whatever you want to go to. I mean, I'm willing to play the game. I understand economic forces enough, or at least my understanding of economics of forces will guide me in whatever system we happen to be in. So I'm cool with it, right? But most people out there will end up failing miserably, and there would be a lot of pain and suffering if the monetary system was to all of a sudden drastically change overnight. Which who knows what would happen. That's like, again, that's me, I guess, basing that in fear or something like that. But um, I think, yeah, I think you as an individual and everybody that you know and everybody that you love and care for and all that should definitely learn as much as they possibly can. Um, I have an HD. Okay, I don't want to use the names because anyway, I guess it doesn't matter. Does Simon have a Home Depot or Lowe's in the area? I think my local lumber yards are closed today. I do have an HD in my area, but not a Lowe's. And the lumberyard that I work at is definitely open today. All right. That's why I'm on here. Learn economics and application of the info. Right? And that's just it. Like, again, like, okay, so I like using the analogy of being out on the river, right? Because the Columbia River is huge, and there is all kinds of watercrafts out there. You have everything from the big freight liners all the way down to little tiny skiffs that are running around out there. And even though you're in the same environment, dealing with the same weather, dealing with the same conditions, no matter what, like all the image of it is exactly the same for everybody, right? The difference is that if you're guiding or you're the captain of that freight liner or you're operating that little skiff, you are not doing the same things. You're not looking at the information the same, you're not behaving the same way, you're not doing the same things, you're not even talking the same language anymore. But yet you're in the exact same environment, doing the exact same thing, right? You're traveling down the river or whatever, like going through the economy. It's the exact same, but you're not looking at it the same way, right? Very much like Scott and I are not looking at it the same way, for obvious reasons that we don't. And again, what the reality is of the situation is all about how you believe it and the evidence that you find from that and the parallel that puts you on. All right. Would AI ever replace underwriters in a time of crisis due to an increase in workload? I would imagine AI is going to take over a lot of stuff, but that's okay. I'm cool with it because that's just going to free us up to do what we really should be doing with our lives. All right, Daddy always said there's no such thing as luck. He's right. Um, yeah, you're right. There is no such thing as luck. I mean, there's times that you feel lucky, but it was more about the probabilities, right? Parents could force or instill more time outside, but they don't. The issue is the parents, which is the boomers generation Xers. No coincidence, those are the generations that speak badly about millennials. And again, it's not speaking badly about millennials, right? I mean, you can speak badly about boomers. You can speak badly about all kinds of generations out there. It's hard to say anything about Generation Xers because nobody knows we exist, right? I mean, it's just like, it's so funny about that. It's the change that took place that people just don't understand. I mean, again, it's not it. A lot of people want to point and blame millennials and say here's some major differences that were different from us. But again, like, when you're coming from a scarcity mindset, that's not a good place to be. And that's where most generations came from prior to the millennials. Millennials were the first ones to say, I don't have that mindset. I don't even, like, who wants to live that way? And I'm actually kind of envious of that, because everybody else has this mental condition that they get over that there's not an abundance out there, right? And that's actually that's deteriorating. That's not enhancing. Uh, I have a Nintendo NES with about 200 of the best games in storage. Graduated 1979. I'm about to donate 100 to get Simon some new frames. Yeah, you know what? These are just some cheap ass readers that I had picked up, I don't know, a few weeks back just because I couldn't read anything anymore. And I'm not really, like, I really need to go have my eyes checked so I can get a proper set of glasses. So if you want to send me $100 for that, that's cool. I'll do it. Do it this weekend. All right. What would that exasperate an already growing debt problem due to inequality due diligence? I'm sorry, I forgot what we were talking about. Dot matrix printers. Yeah, you remember those things? God, they printed out this huge text. It was just like it was impossible. Everyone is talking about money going digital. It's already as via digital cards and debts, and its crypto is a full-fledged psyops. I don't get how people aren't seeing this. Okay, Benny, the difference is that when you are making a credit card or any other kind of digital transaction like that, what you are doing is you are sending a transaction from your bank to another bank who sends that money to a different bank who eventually gets it to the other bank that gets it to the end retailer or whatever, right? So it goes through all these banks. When you are doing a central bank digital currency or a cryptocurrency, you are sending currency directly from one wallet to another, right? It doesn't go through all these little intermediaries or these middlemen in between, right? Because this is how the channel of communication works right now with the way the system is set up. It is very different. Yes, it is digital in the sense that it is a computer entry going from computer to computer at these banks, but it's going through these clearing houses, and every time it does that, it's causing the friction to increase, right? So now all of a sudden you have costs that are involved, in electricity and storage and people, man hours, whatever, to try and get this transaction from your credit card purchase at the store, to from your bank to the store's bank, right? So it has all these channels that it has to flow through. That's what this central bank digital currency is trying to clean up, is all those little middlemen in between it all. Right? So it isn't the same, right? I mean, again, it's the belief that you put into it, right? I believe there's already a digital currency existing and it's in credit cards. And there's your evidence of it. You found it. But to look into it a little bit deeper, you have to understand what it is that they're trying to clear out. Right? And then it also makes it instantaneous so that instead of waiting 3 or 4 days, like when I do a credit card return, I always make sure to tell the customer when I at my retail job, I always tell the customer, you're going to have to wait 3 or 4 days before you see the payment back in your account, right? Because that's how long it takes to clear this out. Central bank digital currency, instantaneous. But right, that's the idea behind it. All right. I work for major Class A railroad. We are storing locomotives and hiring has been paused. This usually means a recession is coming, less product to haul. I can tell you there's going to be a recession coming just from the simple fact that China isn't producing, right? I mean, not saying that. Thank you very much for your comment. I'm not trying to knock it. I think that's great information. I appreciate you actually putting that comment in there. But you're also going to have less product to haul just from the simple fact that China is not producing as much as they once were. And if they're not producing it, then they can't send anything, right? You actually have to produce stuff to send it. If there's nothing produced, there's nothing to send. And that's going to also slow down a lot. Even if people wanted to buy it, it just won't be here, right? There's going to be another shortage coming. And that's really what I keep trying to find evidence of this, right? Because it goes in with the thought that I had before anything ever started to adjust, right? As the Federal Reserve was raising interest rates to try and slow the consumption down, it was at that point that I said, man, this is going to be troublesome, right? We are going to find that there's going to be a huge slowdown in the orders that are taking place. And that slowdown in orders is going to slow down the manufacturing. And if they slow the manufacturing down, then there won't be anything to buy, right? It will literally deplete the stuff. It won't be stuck out on ships or in storage or on rails or in trucks or someplace else that is not on a shelf for you to buy. It just won't exist. And that's going to be bad. All right. I was born in 1988. Who remembers Spitwad Willie? I have no idea what that is. All right. Generation X is actually 3 times bigger than the boomer generation. What? No, it's not. It was one of the few times in history that we actually had a depletion of population. It's like an arrow glass, right? It goes from boomers and then it drops down to Generation X and then it starts to take off, right? And if you look at it from like the male and female, it does something like that, right? It goes from boomers down to millennials, or down to the Xers and then back out to millennials or something like that. All right. I didn't get a cell phone until I was 25 and I'm 35 now. Good for you, man. If it wasn't for the fact that I make money out of using my cell phone, I don't think I would have it either. Like I mean, well, I get a lot of information, so I guess if I had a computer and access to the internet, that's really all I would need. The internet has broken the system, but the system is catching up with their game. Censorship lies. Same here, dude. Went from Walkman to iPod while I was in high school. Generation X were a lot of my friends. Boomers had me their early to kid 30s. Boomers had me in their early to kid 30s. Are you in an attic? No, I am outside under my covered porch. Red is on. $4.99. Thank you so much. Hey Simon, hot out here helping slow mail while listening. Laugh out loud, breaking rules. Let's see here. I don't think you hate me. I like you. No, I don't hate anybody. I like everybody. You know. I mean, even like people who irritate me. Like when I find in life, like I come across somebody who's just like, man, that person is super annoying or whatever. I didn't realize that a lot of times what I find annoying in somebody else is an issue that I have within inside of myself that I don't like. Like I recognize something within myself that I don't like, and it's coming out in that person, and therefore I don't like them for it. But it's actually something within me that I don't like. And I realized that a lot more. Like somebody explained that to me one time, and I went back and I looked at it, and I'm like, oh my gosh, that makes so much more sense. And so that's why I kind of like everybody. It's just like because I don't know. Like I don't expect anybody to behave so that I'm approving of it. I don't care about that. I didn't get a cell phone until high school, and it was previous generation, always Nokia Block phone maybe. Playing Snake while everyone was chirping on Nextel. brick phone. Yeah, okay. I've never used a cell phone. What's it like? Good for you, man. All right. I remember the Zach Morris brick phone. Hey, Glenn, thank you very much, man, for the membership. Yeah, for those of you who don't know, I have a membership for the channel. I promised that I was going to do videos for you guys, and I never pulled through with that, but I do give you early access to videos, and occasionally I'll put up a video that I don't make public, so there is that. I really need to do better for you on that, for supporting the Uneducated Economist. I mean, it's very cool of you to join the channel and join the membership of the channel, and I should do more for you for that. They're tracking you with those creepy title phones, or creepy little phones. Get rid of them. Yeah. They are. They're absolutely tracking you with every little bit of it. I guess I just don't care. Like at that point, it's just like I do care about my privacy and I do care about a lot of that stuff. But when it comes down to it, there's very little chance that you are ever going to be able to secure your privacy when you're using somebody else's programs, when you're using somebody else's service. When it comes to the communication that I have with my wife, that is something that I really hold dear, and I will encrypt those messages. We use Telegram messaging app. Whether or not the government has access to it or not, I don't know, but it seems to piss off people like Russia and Iran, and the United States has been pissed off about it in the past. So when governments don't like it, I have a tendency to like it, and that's usually my indication that it's something that I'm approving of, is when governments don't like something, especially when it comes to communications. All right, they track me without the phone. Dude's been doing the stalkerati thing for me for a while. All right, buying gold is the only way. Buying gold for you personally for an investment purpose, I have a tendency to not lean that way. Like, I don't look at buying gold as something that I'm going to be able to sell into the future for a higher price. Now, whether that happens or not, that would be cool, but it's not my belief in it. My belief in it is more as an insurance policy. I've said that for years, that I buy silver and gold as an insurance to hedge against the possible banking failure, not against inflation. It's never protected me from inflation, ever, but it has provided me with a vehicle when I was completely broke and had no way of buying a car and no way of getting to work. I was able to pull out 165 ounces of silver and trade it to my buddy for a Tahoe. So yeah, I mean, to me, silver and gold's an insurance policy, and everybody should have it. But buying it as an investment, not so much. Not for me anyway. That's not the belief I take with it. I'm liking insulation manufacturers. They must like my reaction because I can spot them out really easily. Okay, let's go on down here. Facts. I worked at a golf course. Can't imagine the little tool to pull the plug out from the green being useful on a lit up rock that wasn't lit up when they played golf. Okay. Let's see here. 300 at the eye doctor, and you are back at the readers, back at the $30 readers. Generation Xers, 1 foot in the grave. Something that I found interesting. Again, like there was like this huge. There was a time in which that, like, so the standard of living in the United States used to be able to provide one income for an entire household, like saying, hey, this one income can do it for everybody, right? And as things kind of changed over time, right? People had access to cars, apartments, jobs, things, right? Yeah, there was inflation, there was all kinds of issues that have happened throughout the economy, but as time has gone on, these things have become less available to us, right? So like Even my wife and I, we had cars and apartment and stuff like that while we were in high school. That's not necessarily something that occurs today. This is not the environment that allows that to occur, right? Very different. But something that I find very interesting that I'm seeing now, and just for an example, like my dad has, he got a new car, and they or him and his, my stepmother, they both have like their cars, right? And then they had this old Explorer, and they've had it for years, and they would use it to, pick up stuff that they needed. If they were running to, pick up a barbecue or whatever it was that they were needing for the house, they would use the Explorer to haul it around. Well, now they don't really need it anymore. Like, they have these other vehicles that work pretty efficiently for them, and so they're just giving me this Explorer. Well, that's pretty cool. Well, my buddy at work, he was just given in a car by his parents, right? Pretty much for the same reason. Like, it was just like they just didn't really need it anymore, and it was just like, hey, we got this whole thing. Instead of just getting rid of it, you can have it. Well, I've noticed that a lot of this hand down stuff is starting to occur, right? As the baby boomer generation is getting older, they don't need all this stuff, and they don't necessarily want to sell it. They're just kind of giving it away. And so I'm almost wondering if this isn't going to turn into a trend in which that, like, the Generation Xers, because they're kind of next in line here, don't get handed a lot of stuff, especially as the baby boomers are passing away. If they're just like literally all the stuff that they've been deprived this whole time that have gone into the baby boomers' hands, actually then starts to filter into the hands of the Generation Xers. It may skip right over them too, and it may not even happen. But just to see those kind of things starting to occur makes me wonder about that. Anyway, just a thought. Thank you, Miles. She's checking them off. It's the way reality works. It feeds you what you are looking for. Yeah, and or what you have put into your subconscious beliefs that exists out there. It'll prove it to you. All right. The Amish don't have to worry about central bank digital currencies. They barely use money. I can't see any of the chats he's reading. Is he on a different platform also? You can't see any of the chats? I mean, you should be able to. All right. The VIG is baked into every bet. All right. Should I pay off secured debt before unsecured debt? Hey, you should pay off the highest interest debt. That's what you should pay. Pay off the highest interest debt first. All right. There will be no escape from central bank digital currency, no freedom, no movement, total police state. Living in fear, Liberty 1776. Don't live in fear, bro. Right? I mean, that's if you take on this mindset about it, and you're going to find evidence of that. Right? And the evidence of that is going to then put you into a subconscious belief that this is what's occurring to you, and then your life will definitely have that involved. Right? I'm not trying to, make you delusional towards, the problems that are existing out there. I mean, they are definitely out there, and there's something you should be concerned about. But when you take on the fear-based consciousness of it, it's going to lead you into a place that you don't want to be, because this is exactly where your subconscious is heading you to. Like, central bank digital currency will ruin my life. Yes, it will. Yeah, central bank digital currency is going to put me in a position in which that I can make a lot of money from the investments that are going to come from that. Yes, it will. Yeah. Seek and you shall find. He's reading it in the past. All right. Act as if you are fire. Aren't you supposed to be water? I think you're supposed to be water. Simon, make a graph. Is all this in Sharpie? Well, which part? Which part do you want to know? I can draw it out. I got my pad right here. All right. I'll draw it out. What do you want to know about? Like, which part? I mean, you can say all of it, but I talked about a lot of stuff, so I don't know. Lord Humongous, great to see you up in here, man. Humongous rules the wasteland. Yes, he does. All right. Who remembers the Toxic Avenger? No problem, man. The Toxic Avenger, was that a character? I wasn't much into cartoons. 3 times more money. All right. they use an EMP on us, the Amish wouldn't miss a beat. What's happening to King Dollar? What are you talking about? I mean, take a look at Argentina right now. Go on Google. Argentina sells yuan for dollars. Right? The dollar's not going anywhere. Right? I mean, if you take on the belief that the dollar is going to disappear and you put the evidence behind it and you have that subconscious belief, then yeah, you will find everything that you need for the dollar to destroy or deteriorate away and become nothing, right? But if you don't see it that way, you know, and I see evidence of King Dollar still coming to destroy the world, right? The fact that Argentina borrowed a bunch of yuan from China so that they could sell them for dollars. I mean, what does that say, right? All right, Simon speaking a lot of truth on us Generation Xers. It's just, yeah. Thank you, Lord Humongous. It's just the generational difference, right? It's just the mindset that we have. I mean, we had to like, you know, some of the things that I think ended a lot with Generation Xers that was very prevalent in our life was stuff like racism, right? And just being accepting of other people's cultures and lifestyles. Like a lot of people have shifted. Like there was a time when people were actually becoming accepting of other people's cultures and lifestyles. And then it got to this weird movement where all of a sudden, unless you believed in a particular way of understanding people's cultures and lifestyles, you were no longer politically correct about that or something. And I misunderstand how that all took place, because there was a time in which that you could have an opinion and people respected that even if it wasn't their opinion, right? But now all of a sudden, if you don't share their opinion, you're disrespected and somehow not part of like the social norm or something. Like I don't get how that works. I misunderstood that, right? But that's unfortunate because Generation X did have an opportunity to actually not have any of that crap going on, where we could all just really just accept people for who they were, and take them for, you know, take it under the merits that we actually live by. It was just like, I don't know what happened. Like they missed it. Like it was there for a little bit. All right. Your grandpa has all the cash. Boomers, Jones, Generation X, Generation Y, Zoomers, Generation Alpha. King Dollar is gold and silver coins. Yeah, it really is, Lord. Lord Humongous does not like the dollar. I mean, no, I should say, I wouldn't say that. I don't. He's probably just more of the gold and silver fan than anything. So. Recent World Economic Forum in China said CBDC will be able to ration fuel purchases and restrict ammunition purchases. Okay, like again, that's not. I mean, they can restrict ammo by just like preventing it from selling, like just ban the manufacturing of it and stuff like that. You don't need to take it all the way down to like here it is on the shelf, but you can't buy it, and like what good is that? And even if you were to introduce central bank digital currency, we accept the idea of our currency. We voluntarily accept that. It is nowhere written anywhere in the law that we have to accept dollar bills or the Federal Reserve note. Like even as a store, you can somebody will say like, "Here, I got some cash for you." You say, "I don't accept cash." Right? I only accept whatever. Right? You can be that way. It doesn't work out too well for business, but you can literally do that. There is no law that requires you to accept cash. We all voluntarily do it. Now, the government does charge taxes in dollars, right? So if you're going to pay taxes, you have to do it in dollars, and that's really what locks everybody into the system, right? But it's all voluntary. It is, and it's hard for a lot of people to concept that, right? You learn a lot more about that as you start studying the sovereign citizen stuff, but really because everybody is not clued into that, there's no way you can really avoid it. All right. Spitwad Willow is a computer game. Oh, I see. What are your thoughts on men go their own way? Um, Man, I don't know if I should really get into this because I have a very different view on a lot of this kind of talk. I think that there is a very huge misunderstanding of what it is that men and women feel, right? Towards relationships, towards life, towards a lot of stuff out there. I think a lot of conditioning that has taken place, both in men and women, have been very detrimental to family formations, towards just connections in general. You're going to find that a lot of times there is blame, right? Blaming one side or the other for not conducting themselves in a manner that is accepting to the other side, right? I mean, I see this stuff a lot. It's a lot about like what we're talking about here, just like, the beliefs that we take in, right? The evidence that comes along with it. So when it comes to like, when it comes to being like a man, right? And what it is that you're expected to do within in society, right? A lot of times, what we feel that it would be appropriate as a man ends up being told what you're doing is wrong. It's toxic, or, something like that, and you end up going against what it is that you feel, right? And you're like, no, this is the way I feel like I should be doing things, right? But then you're told this behavior is inappropriate. So then you begin to behave in a way that is meeting the approval of other people. And unfortunately for this is a manipulation. It's a manipulation on your part as a man, saying, I'm trying to seek the appreciation of people. Maybe it's the attention of a woman. Maybe it's, whatever, right? And you're starting to seek this attention. Right? So you change your behaviors. You're not conducting yourself like a normal man would do. Right? And when I mean by normal man, I mean by the normal instinctual behaviors that a man has. And so when you start going against this behaviors, all of a sudden now you have a society of men who don't know really how to act or how to behave. And they're being told that if they do follow their instincts, that it's somehow toxic. Right? This is very confusing. On the flip side of that, I talk to women who say, where are all the men? Where did the men go? And I'm thinking, what man? What man are you looking for? The one who allows you to behave in any fashion, say whatever you want, do whatever you want, and then still be the provider, securitizer, you know, the solid, foundation for a household or whatever. But yet, the exchange from that isn't the same, right? You see, there's this idea that there's this traditional behavior that a man is supposed to, adhere to, right? You know, be the hard worker, be the provider, be the one who's, the solid rock or whatever, right? And then on the flip side of that, there's not that expectation of the female counterpart. Stay home, do, the housework, take care of the kids, do all that other stuff. Somehow, by even having that sort of thought, you are being somehow you're being toxic, right? So, well, where's the divine coming? Like, what is it, the divine feminine? Where's the divine masculine? Right? If you behave in a way that is solid to the instinctual behaviors in which that you are conducting yourself, you are living authentically. You are living in frame. You are doing the things that are expected of you, right? And the same thing from the opposite side of that. Being a caregiver, on the feminine side, being the caregiver, being the one who's the nurturer, the one who, holds the household in function, as far as it is, right? Keeps that together. Where is this? Like, where is this mentality at? Where is this feeling? Like, nobody, I don't know where this went, right? This used to be something that was very prevalent here in the United States and across the world, but it's been disappearing. So if you don't have the ability to be the masculine man, who the provider, the strong, whatever, well, then you're not going to find that counterpart, right? And so you have men who are incredibly frustrated with life because they're told, hey, don't behave that is natural, instinctual to you. I don't know. That's me just going off. Sorry, guys. All right. Who had Pong video games? I had Pong. All right, I am 64 years old, late boomer, older boomers piss me off. I don't know why. I mean, why? It shouldn't. The information shouldn't make you mad, right? It's all about the way you perceive it. Right? And I mean, there might be evidence and reasonings for it, but again, it's the belief that you were taken from it. Gotta wind up alone because Magato men wind up alone because nobody will follow. Be a team player for once. How many Generation Xers were the original remote control on the TV? Yes. Yeah. How many? That's it. That's a millennial thing. How about that? Yeah. How many millennials remember standing in front of the TV saying, hearing next, click? That was you standing at the TV because we didn't have remotes. We had a big dial on the TV that we had to sit there and turn. And the parents were too lazy to actually get up and change the channel themselves, so they made the kids get up there and do it. And since they didn't know what was on TV, because we didn't really, well, I guess we had TV guides, but we didn't have like a channel that told us what everything was on TV. We actually had to sit there and scroll through TV channels, right? Channel surfing. So, how does that piss you off? All right, talk about 70-year-olds. Talk about 70 and older. Ride with the pack. John Doe, I'm Magato, love it. Have advanced myself in life so far the past few years. Every dollar I make is mine. And now, here's what's something that's really interesting about it. Take on that sort of attitude, right? That this is mine. I'm strong, independent. I'm free. I don't need anybody else in my life. I don't need anything else in my world. I got it all for myself here. I'm kicking it just good. I got my skills. I got my, whatever going on. That shit is attractive. That's attractive to women. You can throw on a couple of, humorous kind of, throwing a little bit of humor into that and, confidence outside of it. You got it made, bro. Man, I don't know why you would be without women. You have all the women you want, It's all about your mindset, man, on that, right? I mean, there's 7 billion people on this planet, right? It's incredible how many people there are. Most very stubborn, closed-minded. Thank God I don't want to piss anyone off. Whatever, I mean, once you're not afraid of pissing somebody off and you're being like, I mean, if you were actively trying to piss somebody off, you can do it. But if you're just being your normal self and you are being true and authentic and that pisses somebody else off, good. That person shouldn't be around you anyway, right? You only want to attract energy of people who are approving of who you truly are. But if you change who you are to attract somebody, right, to make them approving of you, that's manipulative behavior, and it's going to get exhausting. It's going to fall apart on you. Generation Jones, never had that one before. Makes sense. There'd be something between boomers and Generation Xers. Okay. Nothing is yours in the end. Jesse is a closet type. He won't admit it, though. Modern technology is the debol. All right. AI is 2 letters, just so everybody knows. All right. It all belongs to God, baby. Send snail mail for privacy helps me. Gold and silver are a way to hold value of your money at best. No, I don't think it is. I mean, because to be honest with you, I've bought silver since around 2009. I have bought silver a lot of times throughout all those years, and never once has it ever protected me from inflation, and never once have I ever been I guess that's not true. There was a short time in 2011 in which that I could have sold all my silver for a significant profit, but never have I ever been in a position in which that I could sell my silver for a profit, ever, right? So it hasn't worked for me. Maybe it will in the end, but it hasn't yet, All right, and it doesn't mean that I'm knocking silver because I don't like it. I'm just not knock. I'm just not. I just don't believe it as an inflation protection like a lot of other people do. And again, this is the belief that I put into it. Why? Because the evidence has not shown me anything that has protected me from inflation. However, it has been an awesome insurance policy, and I got all kinds of evidence of that. All right, so silver works for me as an insurance policy. It might work for you as an investment. It might work for you as an inflation hedge. Didn't work for me as an inflation hedge. Go fish and get off the internet. Man, Lord, if that ain't the best advice I've heard in a really long time. Thank you for that one, man. I should. All right, gold is for asset diversification, not profit. All right, we were going in on moon landing. All right, laugh out loud. Waste of time and money at this point. You go fishing. If you did make it to the moon, it was something they don't want to tell you. All right, don't snort bath salts. Good advice, Lord. All right, that foosball, the bell. All right, American silver eagles sell at a high price than silver rounds do. Yeah, but they're also government issued, right? So now they have a little bit different characteristics to it as far as the recognizable, right? So when you take it around, people don't question it. They look at a silver eagle, they know exactly what it is. Excuse me. Right. Then it's also got the purity of the government behind it, so people know that it is not like, something that's like not what it says it is. Silver eagles have a little bit of copper mixed into them to make it a little harder. Right? Canadian maple leaves are pure silver, 999, 4 nines behind it. So there's a little difference between those two, but ultimately they're both like government issued, recognizable, carry a higher premium because of that. Now, if you had something that had less if you start adding risk to it, right, then you end up losing that profit that goes with it, or the premium that would go with it, because it's just still silver no matter how you look at it. But if you have a recognizable silver eagle that you could drop just about anywhere, any pawn shop, any coin store, and they're going to recognize it, it's going to have a premium to it, as opposed to something they might question. They look at it and it's like, well, is this legit or not? And so there is a difference inside of those. And then I've always kind of had this thought about like American silver eagles that are legal tender. Like that's another thing. There are actually $1 legal tender that you could spend as a dollar here in the United States. And what I found kind of funny is that my wife was working at a grocery store one day. She opens up the till after she was doing a shift change, right? And when she got to the till, they counted the till, and then she takes over. But in the till was $2 silver that were left over in there. She looks down at these silver dollars and realizes they're silver eagles. Not only did the customer not realize what they were spending, but the cashier at the time didn't understand what they were either. Did recognize them for being an American $1. It says $1 $1 American dollar on it. So she accepted them as dollars, but didn't realize that there was 2 ounces of silver sitting there that was worth, $40-50 at the time. And my wife was able to buy them out of the till for $2, $2, $1 a piece. And so that sort of thing happens all the time. Now it got me thinking. It was just like, well, if you did recognize those as dollars, right, and you were making a sale of, say, a $200 item, right, and you say, hey, I'll buy that item off of you for $10. Correct. 10 silver dollars, right? Legal tender. Now, you can accept them as legal tender, right? Ultimately, you sold that item for $200, right? But you accepted $10 for it. Do you have to claim $200? Yes. But really, you took in 10 legal tendered dollars for it. You sold it for $10, right? But because of the silver value of it and the way the laws are written, essentially you're supposed to take it as $200 and pay the taxes on $200. But really legally, I think you could sell it for $10, right? So long as there were silver eagles that you accepted, everybody's cool with it. And then pay the taxes on $10. 10 Federal Reserve notes, right? All right. I want to see the birds. Oh, they all took off. I'm not sure where they're at, guys. If they come back, they'll be here in a minute. All right. It's fake weed. What flavor? I like vanilla scent. Drugs do me. All right. Do you feel wise? All right. The import car dealership I worked at can't find any ASE master techs under 50. I was the only one at 39 and got rear-ended and broke neck. Oh, shoot. They've been unable to replace me after 8 months. Well, and that's just I have to think about that again because really, like when there's so many other ways of making money, right? When the ability to make money is so prevalent out there, when you go to school, right? You put all these years of training and effort and education into a particular thing, and then you realize, man, it's not really for me. Like I've done all this study now, and it's just like, man, I mean, I enjoyed it when I was younger, but now it's just like not for me anymore. You're kind of stuck on that path, right? You need to pay off your student debts. You got to do all this other stuff. And I have in my mind, the way I see it, if you are younger, right, and you're looking out there at all these people who got degrees and hating their job at the same time, and then having to pay back all these student loans and whatnot, like it would lead me to believe it's just like, man, I don't really want to follow that path, right? And then here you have all this opportunity to make money anywhere you want, right? There's all kinds of opportunities to make money everywhere. And if you're younger, those opportunities are more prevalent because you see them. You see those opportunities more. So it just makes sense that, like, why would you go to school to become a tech when you may not even enjoy that after a while? And there's so many other ways of making money and things that you might even do enjoy. So, I don't know. It's not surprising to me to see that. That's why another reason why you're going to see AI take over. AI, since it's two different letters, right? All right. All right. Small brand. I'd rather have a bottle in front of me than a frontal lobotomy. Oh man, I used to drink a lot, and giving up alcohol was probably one of the best things that I had ever done. It was so hard and it wasn't fun, and even nowadays it's still like difficult to, sometimes to deal with, because old habits and old thoughts and stuff, end up coming back up. But as far as like one of the biggest changes of my life, I think giving up alcohol is probably one of the most profound, biggest changes. Generational wealth has potential to create class systems. Yeah, absolutely. Hey, thank you, Efrey Jepstein, for the 5. Where is that from? Lira? Maybe? I don't know. I'm sorry. I don't recognize it. Hi, Yui. Need your opinion. I have 20,000 in credit card debt. Will take about 3 years with my current income if everything goes well. I have the option to run. Pay off your credit card debt. You want my advice? Pay off your credit card debt. Right? Don't run. I ignored my debts for a really long time, and I wish I hadn't, because it was far more painful to try and solve that problem than to have dealt with it when it was first starting, right? I let it pile up, let it get worse, and then when it came time to pay it off, I had to work ever increasingly harder to do it. So if you can do it in 3 years, just do it, man. Just do it in 3 years and be done. And just whatever, right? It's only 3 years. I mean, it's a long time, it's 3 years of your life. But once you are out of it, like I tell you what, man, and other people I've talked to about this exact thing have experienced the exact same feeling. When you are severely in debt, like 20,000, that's a lot. Like when you're $20,000 in debt and you really don't have any way or understanding or thoughts of how it is that you plan on getting out of that, other than just working very hard and saving as much as you can, that is difficult, right? It's a difficult thing to try and face and deal with and work through, right? Because you want to enjoy the money. You don't want to throw it to debt, because there's no return on that, or at least it doesn't feel like there's any return on it. You do it for a long time, like a long time, right? You're eating peanut butter and honey sandwiches. You're, wearing your shoes out to the point that they're falling apart. You buy as little as you possibly can. You're walking $20 down to the bank to put it on your credit card debt, because it doesn't matter how much you're putting on, or it does matter how much you're putting on, but it it doesn't matter how little you put on, so long as you're putting it on there, right? And you do that, and then one day you'll be free of debt, right? And this huge weight will be lifted off your shoulder. All this hard work, all this time, all this sacrifice that you have been dealing with to get to this point is finally, it's finally made it, right? You're finally there. And now, all of a sudden, you're walking around, everything looks brighter, right? The coffee that's brewing smells awesome, right? The line that you're waiting in is fine, right? All of a sudden, all this stuff about the world just starts feeling and looking so much better than it ever has. Right? Pay off your debts, man. It feels great. And then the mindset you'll be in after that, right? Because you've been saving this whole time. Now you can just switch from paying off debt to investing. And now you watch a portfolio grow, right? And you keep that mindset going where all this money, all this saving, all this hard work that I'm doing, I'm now switching it to investments. And in 3 years, I'm gonna be sitting on a stack of cash. I'm gonna be sitting on a stack of investments. I'm gonna be sitting on, opportunities unlike anything I ever had. Right? Pay your debts off. This is what it comes. That's what comes from it. All right. I always go fishing. I was gardening before. Picked up some potatoes and peas. I don't live on the internet. Well, good for you, man. Grow weed, easy 5 figures in 2023. I doubt it. All right. I'm sorry, Rhoda. Weed is a terrible way to go about making money. If it was illegal, I would agree with you. But now that it's legal, it's worthless. Weed has no value to it whatsoever. The only way it ever had any value is when they made it illegal. And medicinal, I shouldn't say that because medicinal does have some value to it, and then if you process it, then I guess there's some value in the processing of it. But other than that, weed is a worthless, pointless, no value product whatsoever. The Amish use money all the time. I live around them. They transact in money every day. I'm recovering, was fully paralyzed, and now looking like I make a good recovery. Good. I grow cucumbers this year. I've already picked one. They're doing good. 3 huge tomato plants too. Saving on tomatoes and cucumbers always. Taste way better too. You know? And that's just the thing. Like, you get into gardening, and it's like, not only is it like awesome because you get this really fresh, awesome food, right? It can't get any better than that. The nutrients that you get from living food, like food that you pick today and eat it right away, is so much better than the stuff that's been harvested weeks and traveled and all that other. They do all kinds of stuff to keep it fresh, and it's just really not as beneficial for you than growing your own. There's so many things that you can do that a lot of people just don't even realize that can provide you with a continuous food source out of a garden. Like my wife, she grows beet greens, right? So she'll plant a bunch of beets with no intentions of ever harvesting it for the beet, but literally just growing it for the tops. And they grow a lot of tops, right? So if you're picking them, they'll just keep spitting out tops. And if you have quite a few of these plants going, you can pick them every day and add them to salads and, use those greens every day. And that's something that she's been doing for years. For years and years. All right, no joke. They're a little difficult. Okay, toxy. After a while, you learn to deal with it or check it out. All right. Glad to hear that. Right or wrong, be sure to ask for more money when you get back to work. Harder than weed, easier than tomatoes. Weed and tomatoes, exactly the same. Weed will hold itself up, tomatoes will not. What do you... All right. Not indoor perfection. I don't grow tomatoes in the closet. All right. The writer of Famine is here and now, along with the writers of Pestilence and Death and Hell, are all unleashed upon earth. I grow food outside. I'm growing food over there. It's walking around right now. See, growing, like, I love raising birds. Birds, I've always just, birds are like one of my favorite animals, and I've always just like had a fun time, like raising chickens and having the birds around. But raising them for meat, like raising Cornish cross rocks, that was a pretty amazing experience, and I think that a lot of people could end up raising their own birds. They're in a very small area, and really have a chicken once a week. And I think it would be very easy for them to do. Like a Cornish cross rock takes 8 weeks to grow, right? So from the time you get it from a little chick to the time you're ready to butcher it is literally 2 months, right? And most of the time they're a fairly small bird. Like they're about, little guys at 4 weeks. It's those last 4 weeks that they just really boom. They just like really gain the pounds in the size. And so, really, if you had just even a fairly small area, you could raise, 5 birds in a fairly tight confined area for a fairly short amount of time that they would be there, and have like fairly consistent once a week food source, as far as the protein goes. You can order these chicks off the internet, so they come in the mail, like, they just literally come as a chirping box. If you get a few neighbors to do the same thing, then you can order like 25, 50 of these little chicks, and then divvy them out between everybody and just raise birds like that. um, I mean, I've thought about it a few times just to try and do it. For an example of it, I raised batches of 25 and then again 50. It would either be 25 or 50 that we would do, and we would butcher them at 6 weeks for like 2 pound birds, and then again at 8 weeks for the full size 5 pound, 6 pound birds. It was a great hobby. It was a great little business that we had going here in the state of Oregon. You can raise 1,000 birds and sell them off your property, butchered, so long as they are a whole bird. You can't like cut them up and just sell like the breast or the thighs or something like that, but you can sell the whole bird, 1,000 of them, no inspections, no license, no any of that stuff. Just a couple of rules that you have to follow as far as like labeling and record keeping. But other than that, and then you have to sell them directly off the property, so the customer has to come to you. But other than that, I mean, shoot, you can raise a lot of birds and they will pay completely for themselves. You'll have all the chicken that you could ever possibly want, and you might even make a little bit of money doing it too. So raising chickens for meat is a pretty easy thing to do, and it's actually pretty profitable too. I mean, we were selling the birds for $5 a pound, which I thought, no way is anybody ever going to buy these birds for $5 a pound. We sold every one of them every time, no problem. Right? Everybody was just like, you know, not necessarily organically raised, but they were free range. They just ran around the yard, right? We didn't necessarily give them like organic feed, but everything they were eating was pretty much organic. Right? I'm pretty close, bro. Okay, let's see here. Outdoor, 10 times worse is 10 times worse. Okay, thoughts on new interest payments on national debt numbers and how to pay it. This is something that I find very interesting. Is that, I mean, we talked about this just a little bit earlier, in how the Treasury is loading up on cash. The Treasury general account is like, I don't know how much money is in it right now, 400 billion or something like that. I don't know what the exact number is. And when you look over the past few years, that's not very much comparatively what they've had just recently, like during, the pandemic and all the stimulus checks being issued out there and stuff like that. But prior to the pandemic, 400 billion was a pretty high number for the Treasury general account to be at. And if you go back prior to that, like, it would never be that high. It would be much less than that. Like, I think the Obama administration actually kicked it up a lot when the quantitative easing kicked in. So the general Treasury account sitting at like 400 billion, they have plans to load up even more on that. Like they're already at where they thought that they should be, right? Or where they had historically been before the pandemic. So maybe things have changed. They got more debts to pay, whatever. So now they got to kick this up a little higher. Well, it to me, it falls very much in line with the idea that they are planning on in 2024 to do a bunch of bond buybacks, and this is very much leading up to that, right? They're not going to put out the announcements, hey, we're going to load up on a bunch of cash because we plan on buying bonds because there's going to be a liquidity issue in 2024. Like they can't come out there and just say that. They would drive the markets absolutely bananas, and they would just like, all hell would break loose. So they can't like come out and say it, although they did say it. They said it, back in May. And if you just go and take a look at the video I put out just a couple of days ago, it talks about that exact thing. Right. So, here the Treasury General account's going to get loaded up on cash. We run into a liquidity issue, and it doesn't really matter what the interest rates are, right? If they are higher in 2024, bond prices are going to be lower than they are today. That means the Treasury can then buy back those bonds for less than what they were issued out at. Now, whether or not that actually takes place, I don't know. Time will tell, but it seems evident that that's what we're leading up to. Although plenty of other people will probably look at the exact same information and come up with an entirely different belief with all kinds of other evidence that will then put them on a different idea of what's happening. So, but that's the way I kind of see it. We as humans can do way better with growing food, weed, whatever. Yeah. Weed and humans are equal. I packed a bowl for a kid one time to smoke a living cricket. He did it. What are you getting at, man? All right. George Lincoln Rockwell. I agree with UE regarding the gender behaviors and roles. Well, thank you, Scruffy. It's very difficult to marry someone. No, it's not. It's super easy. It's difficult to be married to somebody. That's the problem. Blood is not thicker than water. All right. I loaded a dead roly-poly bug into a bomb for my buddy. Okay, you guys are weird. All right. Perhaps it is time to turn us men into cannon fodder. All right. Let me get a hit, bro. Okay. Smoke cricket. All right. You guys smoking bugs. Gosh, past all that. Okay, I remember when they first put the guide on TV. Yeah, I did too. Remember how we all like just sat there and watched the TV guide channel scroll for hours because they had these commercials on there that would catch our attention. All right, I don't know. Maybe that's still the case. I don't know. I don't have TV. All right. We only had 3 channels on TV when I was a kid. SEC verdict on XRP. It is not a security. Missed opportunity. You would probably like Archake's channel. He has good attitude like you. Right on. What do you think about the Passport Bros movement? I'm not sure. I don't know. I'm not sure what that is. You got it made, bro. All right. Life is simple. We just complicate it. All right. Here's the birds are starting to walk back up here. All right. Let's see. What does it say? Myself is silly and troll people to get information they are hiding. People don't like it. Dude, I was being sarcastic. I way past trying to make others happy. Let alone care. Jesus. All right. What's the best thing about dating a black... Oh, guys, I'm not going to deal with that. All right. A lot of men have backed out because a lot of today's women are promiscuous and unreasonable on standards. I've been married and divorced, tried dating again, and don't want the stress anymore. Oh, guys. So you guys wanted to see. There's the turkeys. Go on. Get. See, look, this is what they're leaving behind. Get out of here. Go on. So those are my turkeys. Or turkey and chickens. Yeah, well, everybody, I guess, has their opinion on what it is that they are expecting out of other people, right? And that's where, like, I think the generally speaking on what is happening out here, with the behaviors between men and women is really comes down to a lot of the energy that you are emitting yourself, right? And that's really what it comes down to. And I know a lot of people will be shaking their heads around that and stuff. I don't know what to say about it, man. It's all about the beliefs that you have, right? The information that you take in, the evidence that goes with it, and the conclusions that you come from. Exactly. If it's not your problem, don't make it so. Bro, pure evil cog. That was a cackle toad joke about AI. Alright, if you get married, get a hardware wallet and store up as much BTC in it without her knowing, you will be happy you did. Alright. So just in the idea of that, it shows a lack of trust. And if you have a lack of trust within it, then you're in a relationship that you probably should be in anyway, right? I mean, there is no secret that I have from my wife. Like nothing. Like there is no way that she would ever like find something out about me that she didn't already know. She can't. Like I just don't live that way. Right? And I pretty much feel the same way about her. Like I don't think there's any secret that she has that I don't know. Right? I mean, there's just like I just don't think that exists. The moment that you have that kind of thing going on, then stuff falls apart. It doesn't work right. So just this, mark the shark just by, just the concept of that alone is going to say that it's going to fail. Hitting the tracking button on the VCR. Yeah, that was a good one. Remember when the remotes had wires attached to it? Like you could have a remote, but it had this big long wire that went back to the VCR. Purity of the government. There's an oxymoron. Expensive purchase. Matt Bitter. Okay, Sunshine Mint silver rounds are a good alternative to Silver Eagle. Sunshine Mint manufactures the blanks for the U.S. Mint. Yeah, I absolutely agree with that, and I have a bunch of the Sunshine Mint for that exact reason for it, because it is a fairly recognizable bullion piece that is not a government issue, carries a whole lot less premium, and is pretty much accepted by everybody. I agree. Sunshine Mint stuff is good. People in Australia all day, every day sort $1 coins from banks to find coins worth more than $1. Yeah, you can do that right now. If you were to pull a pre-81 copper penny, you are pulling a coin that has 2.5 times the face value, right? So for every roll of pennies that you have that are pre-81s, you actually have $1.50 worth of metal. So hold on to that until the time they disband the penny and sell your copper off. All right. That's a true sucker. Nobody has to sell you anything. I'm an early millennial and I had 2 dial TVs. We were poor. Yeah. We're a country of marks, though. You never make money, you make debt. That's it. All right. Why is the dollar losing against other currencies and it's going to stay that way for a while? Well, that's your belief, and I don't believe that. So it's losing it because people are misunderstanding the CPI and how inflation is coming down is going to not cause the Fed to adjust interest rates down. And they don't understand how right now we are going to find that the real interest rates are going to start increasing until the end of the year when we have a serious liquidity crisis taking place, so much so that the Treasury is now getting ready to buy back bonds so that they can keep that bond market liquid. Seems pretty obvious to me. I don't know. Maybe other people don't see it that way, but it seems really obvious, you know. But that's the stuff that I look at and I believe, right, from the evidence that I see. So whether or not it's accurate, it's what I see. You know? All right. Internet can be your best friend, but it's only as good as the questions you ask it. Absolutely true. Absolutely true. And then again, not only the questions you ask it, but the way you put meaning behind the answers. Right? It's two: the questions you ask and the meaning behind it. I won't say anything about alcohol. People defend it. A lot of people, they hear like, okay, you're a former alcoholic, you're a recovering alcoholic or something like that, and then they immediately have to be sensitive. Like they feel like they have to be sensitive around it. Like, all of a sudden it's just like they don't want to be like open about how much they drink, or they don't even want to drink around you or something like that, because all of a sudden they just kind of get this weird off-putting feeling from you or something because of this, you know, condition that you were in, whatever that's supposed to mean, right? But that's not like the case for me. Like some of the best times I've ever experienced in my entire life was, alcohol was involved. Like I would never give any of those things up. I would never give that up, right? And there's plenty of times in which that I'm in social situations in which that I think, man, having a beer right now would be really awesome, right? And for me personally, I know that it wouldn't just be that situation. I would enjoy the beer and the situation, and everything would be fine from it. The problem would be the next day wanting to drink again, or wanting, giving the excuse for it or something else, and then they'll just start leading into other situations. I'm aware of that. Right? I don't need that stuff. I don't need it in my life. I don't need to experience that anymore. But as far as like other people in the consumption of alcohol and stuff, I mean, I don't really have a problem with it. Right? It's people who are looking to change their life. That's one. That's one of them. Right? If you're looking to change your life, it'll change your life. Right? Both ways. Whether you start or give it up. Let's see. It's gone down since 9/11. It's never come back. Okay. Lord Humongous. 100% more money, more debt, or people that need that money to pay off the debt. Money goes to my bank account to die. Society punishes me for saving my money. Okay. Let's see. I live well below my means. That's the way to do it. I mean, it doesn't really matter how much money you make. It's all about how much money you can save. Uh, More specifically, high interest debt, leveraging low interest debt to make a profit is the modus operandi for most entrepreneurs. Yak is where the money is. Okay, great. That's exactly what they need to do on federal level with every drug, just like alcohol. Hemp is a great paper alternative. I grow my own, so I could give it an F. Not gonna say a thing. I live in Texas where 5 AK-47 wall hangers. So I live in a good spot. Quit smoking weed. I agree with you, Lee, on a bit about getting rid of the bad debt. Afterwards, you will be in a good financial shape and have better understanding of how it all works. Yeah, it was, I mean, everything about getting out of debt, like that was like the other major change, like quitting alcohol and getting out of debt. Like those two things were so changing for me. I mean, about everything, like the way I think, the way I feel, the way I behave, giving up alcohol and getting out of debt. Growing pineapples are so much better than store-bought. You live in Hawaii? All right. Beet greens high in oxalates. Bad for kidneys. Huh, I didn't know that. All right. Okay. I smoked for 20 years, quit that stuff. Good for you. I've going on year 31. Huh. All right. I like growing peas the most. Sugar snaps, so good raw. Yeah, and it's fast. That's what I like about those peas. constantly like a continuous harvest, and they grow really fast. So like from the time you plant them to the time that you're actually ready to harvest is a very short amount of time. I love tax-free weed. Turkey, clean to eat. I own my own home. I invest in Apple. I'm a rabbit guy. Yeah, I raised rabbits, but I found the, well, I guess it's all about the way you cook it, but I found the meat to be a little bland for my liking. And then I butchered a few of them, and they're fairly easy to butcher out. But it was just like it was hard to get past the carcass looks like a cat when you're skin them, and it was just like everything about it just seemed kind of weird. But the meat was okay. I mean, I just found it to be not nearly as like appetizing as I was hoping it to be. All right, I toss UE cash like he's a stripper once a month. Yeah, thank you. I'll take it. KFC all day. Let's see here. I want to dig a pond out and grow bluegill to catch. That'd be fun. Can you elaborate why you don't assume that the Fed is quietly buying bonds through the back door every time rates threaten higher in the 10-year? What other entity has buying power to drop 30 basis points? Why do you assume that it's the Fed? Right? I mean, that would be the other question. Like, I mean, we can assume anything we want. Is there any evidential, like, evidence of that? I mean, you can believe it, right? You put the thought in your head, I think it's the Fed doing it. I have this emotional connection to this thought, right? And I'm believing that. Now, here's all the evidence that goes along with it, right? That's how you end up with that belief of it. Now, I personally don't necessarily see it that way. And now why I don't see it that way is because I see the Federal Reserve is unwinding their balance sheet. Now, it doesn't really mean anything on whether or not they are actually doing it, right? I mean, it does mean something, but it doesn't really mean anything because it's not going to determine their monetary policy by a false assumption that they're playing with the bond market, right? What they're going to do is they're going to adjust their monetary policy based on the data and information that they have at their disposal, which is the same data and information that we are looking at, right? So if you can assume like, hey, the Federal Reserve is going to do all these different things out there, right? But there's no evidence of that, right? Now, if the Federal Reserve is going to adjust their monetary policies, I'm going to be saying, okay, well, they're going to look at unemployment, wherever that's at, whether or not that's a real number or not, it doesn't really matter. It's going to adjust their monetary policy, whatever it is that the number that they're talking about, right? So if they have unemployment low, regardless if it is low or not, is going to determine their monetary policy. So that's what I look at. Not because I think that's where it's at, not because I feel that, any particular way about it, is because I know that the Federal Reserve and the FOMC, the Federal Open Market Committee, are going to be looking at that unemployment as the information that they are going to use to adjust their monetary policy. So I look at that, right? It's low. They're not going to use that information to adjust our monetary policy higher because unemployment is low. That's how I look at it, not whether or not it's real, right? Because that doesn't matter, right? What matters is what the FOMC is going to do with their monetary policy, because that does matter, right? And it does matter if unemployment is showing that it's low, regardless if it is or isn't. Because if it's showing it's low, then the Federal Reserve isn't going to use that as a reason to raise interest rates. You see? Or to lower interest rates. That's the difference, right? So that's why I'm explaining it that way. I mean, show me evidence of them doing it, and I'll be like, okay, well, here in their monetary policies, they're going to adjust it due to the fact that they're buying these bonds or whatever. Right? But you can believe it all you want. Right? I mean, and that might put you on a trajectory, on a parallel that lands you in the perfect spot because you believe that. Right? I'm not saying it isn't. I'm just saying that I don't see the evidence of that. All right. Make it rain. I could give him more than $1. That's almost insulting. All right, bluegills. You got to fry them with the skin on. All right. If you're talking fast food, I'll take some Taco Bell. Those Chipotle Ranch grilled chicken burritos. Absolutely 100. Do you invest in yourself? Try it. That is really where investment should go, is back into yourself. Fast food, mystery cooking oils, no thanks. Once a year for me. Yeah, I can't, like when I was younger, I could eat fast food, but now I eat it and I just feel terrible. Like I just feel ill. Like I feel dragged down, I feel tired, I feel unmotivated. Like it's like a sludge that's going through my system. I don't do it anymore, you know. Retro, I like to get some big enough to fillet and fry them in breadcrumbs like chicken. Yeah. My parents thought I was dumb for wanting to grow food when I was younger. I don't understand that. That is, growing your own food is probably one of the greatest things that you can do, no matter how much money or whatever you got, right? I mean, not only is it good for you mentally, it's good for you physically in every way. Creating the garden, growing the garden, eating the garden, everything about it is beneficial, right? There is nothing bad can come from growing your own garden, right? Nothing. It's 100% benefit, you know, if you can make it happen, all right? Jesus can't save them. Why do you think you can? I love bluegill so good. Passive aggressive, suck stoner, keyboard commanders, and nerds. Man, you're awesome. Thanks. All right, appreciate it. All right, it's okay, man. Thoughts on Bitcoin? I don't know. Like, what's the question on it? I mean, I think Bitcoin's. I think it's a pretty cool type of currency, if you want to call it that. I think it's pretty neat that you can have a way of paying somebody anywhere in the entire world if they have access to the internet. Once you start that transaction, there's nobody in the world who could stop it. No government, no authority, no anybody. It's going to happen no matter what. I think that's a pretty cool thing, right? A lot of people said it was anonymous when they first, introduced Bitcoin, or when Bitcoin was first introduced to the world or whatever. That's not the case, but I never really cared about it being the case, right? I mean, I thought about that being kind of cool as far as one of its features in the beginning, but we all learned that's not the case anymore with it. But as far as having something that cannot be, like, that cannot be stopped by government, that I like. Like anything that's out of government control that the people like, I'm cool with. Like, yeah, So, I smoke weed and bought 40 acres, no debt, and have a good homestead off the ground. It all depends on the person. Doesn't affect me in the least. Young man's extra earnings, nest egg. Young woman's extra earnings, travel. Again, like, it's generally speaking, it's not necessarily the case, I mean, but it is, kind of prevalent out there. I don't know. It's just something within the instinctual behaviors of men that they want to provide. Like I've seen it. I've talked about this before. I've seen it in guys, and I've faced it myself. Like you'll be in the middle of harvesting something, right? And especially like you see it in like commercial fishing or something where you can just catch a lot of something, right? Or it just doesn't matter, even if you're just going for it. Something happens when you get into the thick of it, right? And you're pulling it, like you're pulling the fish, you're pulling the whatever it is you're harvesting, and you're getting a lot of it, and you get into almost like this frenzy feeling of getting it all. Like you got to get as more, and it's like even though you have enough, you get more. Like you just want more and more, and just keep piling it up. And it's this weird feeling that just kind of overwhelms you. And then when you're all done, you're like, man, why did I go for so much? Like, why did I pile it all? I didn't even know why I did that, right? But it's something instinctual inside of you, knowing that you have to get as much as you possibly can because you're going to take it back and you're going to share it and you're going to do whatever with it. It's not for you, right? There's no way that you could ever consume this much, right? But that wasn't the point of it. The point of it is that you have to get as much as you can because you're going to be sharing it and providing it for other people. And it's just this weird instinctual thing that happens. And you can see it. You can see it happen. go and try and collect anything, go and harvest anything with a group of guys who do it, and you will see, like, especially in the commercial fishing, it just gets like just hungry. They just get it all, you know. All thought process through angles. Those poor little chicks at Tractor Supply. The dude with the George Lincoln Rockwell name. Huh? I smoked a roach. All right, why don't you explain why you don't think the Fed buys back bonds for you back? Well, okay, first of all, why don't I explain how come it is that the sun doesn't grow trees? I mean, don't give me something to explain to you that I don't think exists. Like, I mean, give me proof of it and then I'll explain it, right? I mean, it's just like, you know, I mean, explain to me why it is that I don't think my woman's cheating on me. Right? I mean, that's kind of a weird question to ask. I can't even begin to concept, you know, an answer to that. Right? They're not doing it. There, you know, I mean, it's just like, all right, uneducated, you demand, keep doing what you're doing. Thank you, man, I will. All right, what do you smoke if it don't affect you? All right, what do you save extra? Where do you save extra cash now? I put it in the bank. I'm putting it in the bank for the next 6 months because I think in 6 months we're going to be finding a lot of buying opportunities as the real interest rates start to rise due to the fact that the inflation expectation is falling and the Federal Reserve is probably going to stop raising the interest rates, or if they do, it's just going to be a couple of rate hikes that are not going to be very significant. And I think that real interest rate rising is going to be very painful on the economy as people are not quite understanding how that operates. And let me see if I can draw that out for you. All right, let me see if I can figure this out. Let me get my notepad here. I brought this notepad out because I figured I would end up using it at some point. Let's see if we can do this. All right. What do we got here for pens? Well, I'll use this green pen here. All right. So what do we have going is we have the Federal Reserve raising interest rates. And so they raised them quite aggressively, and then they kind of tapered off a little bit, right? And so I can't remember what it was when they started to, they ran it up to what, 3.5%? When did they go from half a point increase to a quarter point increase, right? Whatever that was. Let me see if I can do this. Okay. Now, again, when it comes to the real interest rates, right, we have to think about again, like where the inflation expectation is to what it is that people feel the interest rates are at, or what their interest rates are really at. Either way, right, there is the real interest rate that is found in between that. So again, like if we have the investor who's going to get a 2% return on their investment, but they believe that there is a 1% inflation that's taken place, the real return will be 1%. If you can lower the inflation expectation to 0, you will raise the real interest rates to 2%, what the investor believes that they are going to get from their investment after the inflation expectation. So if you have let's just say 3% Fed funds rate, right? Interest rates are at 3%. The inflation expectation is at 6%. Okay, so now you have an inflation expectation at 6%, but a Fed funds rate at 3%. Okay, the interest rate, the real interest rate, is now significantly higher, or lower than what people are anticipating it being, right? Because the return off of the 3% is actually negative at that point, right? Negative 3%. Because you have an inflation of 6%, but you have a 3% interest rate, right? So it's negative 3%. Now, what ends up happening is that if you can lower the inflation expectation from this point, right? So now we have inflation running extra hot, extra long, whatever, right? So we have this high inflation expectation. We drop that down at the same time that the Fed funds rate or the interest rates are elevated, right? So let's kind of look at it like this, right? So we got, boy, this is terrible. I should have used a black pen, right? So if we can imagine the Fed funds rate ran up and then it started to kind of slow down as far as their interest rate hikes, right? So here we are at 5.25. Okay. We're gonna do it like that, right? So, they started tapering. I think it was around 3. I can't remember what the exact number, but it doesn't really matter. We're just gonna say it was around 3. And then they kind of tapered it off as far as they're increasing to 5.25. Now, there's a lag that starts to take place within this, right? So the time that they raise the interest rates, so the time that it actually affects the economy, takes anywhere from like 6 months to a year. Nobody knows exactly how far that is, right? So the real interest rate, right, from the time that the Fed raises it, is going to lag out. It's going to be behind there somewhere, okay? So I'm going to draw a line that kind of represents the lag. Okay, so I'm going to draw it like that, right? So that 3% where the Federal Reserve, raised rates to 3%, it's taken 6 months or so, right, to actually hit the economy and start feeling the effects of it. Inflation expectation. Oops, let me use another. Inflation expectation was quite high, right? All right. So inflation expectation was quite high. As that starts to come down, people are going to feel that the interest rates at 5.25, right? They're going to feel that the interest rates at 5.25 are too high, right, for the inflation that we are experiencing today. But inflation is actually experiencing what 3% is doing to the economy because of the lag that has taken place. See, 5.25 is very restrictive to the economy, right? 3% was enough to change the consumer to put enough pressure on the consumer to start bringing prices down. And this is getting very confusing for a lot of people because of that lag that takes place and the fact that inflation is coming down. A lot of people are assuming it's the 5.25 that has brought the inflation down, but it's not. It was the 3% or whatever it was lagging that, 6 months, 3 months ago, that is now bringing it down. Okay, so really it's the 3% that we are feeling from the economy that is bringing the inflation down, not the 5.25. So give it some time. Right, and so I'm going to draw it again here. So 1 to 3%, go to 5.25, maybe we go to 5.5, right? And we maintain 5.5, right? Where the Fed funds rate, right, goes up to 5.5, and then they keep it there for a significant amount of time. What will end up happening is the inflation, right, going from 6% or whatever it was, we're just going to make up a number, it goes down to say 2%. So, does something like that, right? Who knows what it does, how fast it gets there, even if it gets down to 2%, who knows, right? But we're just going to assume that it gets back down to the 2% target that they're looking for, even though it's not a target, they're going for 2% average inflation rate over time. Now, the impacts of that interest rate, the real interest rate, will be significantly higher during that time that the interest or that the inflation rate or the anticipation, I guess the inflation expectation, has come down while maintaining the elevated interest rates. You see what's happening here? Now the real interest rates are significantly higher when that happens. So the position that we're sitting in right now, I'm not sure if I explained that quite, so everybody could get it, but the position that we're sitting in right now, right? We had elevated inflation that is now starting to come down. We had a Fed funds rate, right, that operates in a lag that has now gotten significant. The space that we are feeling of real interest rates right now, because the inflation is coming down and the interest rates on the Fed funds level are fairly close to each other, that's going to start to widen as the inflation expectation starts to fall and the Fed maintains that higher elevated Fed funds level. That is going to be the pain that people experience, right? As those higher interest rates are going to make it very difficult in the economy, and it's going to slow things down dramatically. That's where the liquidity issues are going to start coming in. It's where borrowing money to pursue the things that you want in life are going to be very hard to find. Where borrow or to acquire money to pay off your debts are going to be very difficult to find, right? And this is the liquidity issue that is going to start taking place because of it, right? That falling of inflation expectation and the high level of maintaining at the Fed funds level is going to widen that real interest rate and be the pain that people are going to expect, or not expect, should expect, right? I doubt they're expecting it, but they should be expecting it. So that's my understanding of what's happening. All right. Did you get a chance to run your stocks through the dividend calculator? No, I haven't, but I'm going to do that. I'm going to check that out. Thank you for bringing that up too, Matt. I appreciate that. Agreed. Different era. Okay. I like going to visit the Titanic risk analysis. Wow, just signed on, and here's some very ground statements. Positive energy attracts positive people and positive experiences. Same with negative energy. Absolutely it does, It was one of the reasons why, I don't really hang out with a lot of the people that I used to hang out with, and simply because a lot of the people I used to hang out with were, people who were consuming a lot of alcohol and stuff, and it's not like they're not, they're all great guys, they're great people, everything about it, but I had to change a lot of who I was, and, part of that is the people you hang out with, and, it's just unfortunate, but, give him a break. He hasn't been in the dating market for a while. For a long while. I've never really been in the dating market, right? Roosters crow their magic hours before sunup. Yeah, they do. As a child, I enjoyed watching Wall Street Week with Lewis. Who is that? Rukeyser? Drove my dad mad. Would you sign a waiver that said you were going to die 100 times? Alright. Cash and king prices are dropping, and you can see a lot of sales in want items. Yeah, living is risky and death is behind you. 24/7. Get used to it. What's your economic outlook for 2024? I think there's going to, like I keep saying it, I think there's going to be a buying opportunity coming in 2024. I think there's going to be some serious liquidity issues as the Federal Reserve is tightening up their monetary policies. I think the Treasury is getting ready for it. I think people are going to be quite surprised by 2024 and how significant of a downturn there is going to be, especially when it comes to assets out there. If there was no alcohol, the birth rate would be 0. Get used to making any mistake and dying horribly. He was right about that. I watched my parents get divorced, couldn't find anyone better than get remarried after 5 years. Now they argue and fight every day, but are too old to give up again. Well, that to me sounds like it's more of personal issues that are happening within the individuals themselves. If you have a particular energy within you that attracts that type of people, then it's the energy that you are not taking awareness of, right? If you always have people who are treating you like hell or cheating on you or whatever, is because you are attracting those type of people from the energy that you were emitting, and there's something inside of you that is saying, hey, I'm broken or I'm not fixed or whatever, that then has these people, you're seeking out these like approval from people, right? And then what ends up happening a lot of times is the failure to establish decent boundaries, right? So without these decent boundaries, and then on top of that, people pleasing, manipulative behavior on top of that, you end up with issues in which that boundaries get crossed and people fight. Like if the boundaries were established in the very beginning, right, and people did not behave in a way that was trying to seek out the approval of other people, then you would find that the energies work very well together, right? And those energies don't have the issues in which that, like, fighting and stuff like that comes up, right? That isn't, it's just not even there, because it doesn't even get to that point. I don't know. When society tells you you must go to college, do you blame them for their college debt and a government bailout? Yes, I do. Because you are responsible for yourself. Don't blame other people, especially society, for pushing you into college or marriage or kids or vaccinations or investments or anything else out there. Make these decisions for yourself, right? You can't, I mean, do you blame, yeah, I blame individuals for their actions. I do, right? I mean, I've been held responsible for all my actions. I mean, is it unreasonable for me to, like, say, yeah, because society lied to you, that's not your fault? No, it's your fault, right? I mean, it sucks for you, but it's your fault for listening. And I know, like, as a kid, it's very difficult because you would think that everybody who is telling you this stuff is somebody that is trustworthy. And in their head, they are believing what they are saying, right? They do believe those things and they have evidence of it all the time. And so it's not like they were attempting to mislead you because they wanted to be, like, evil and, hurtful or something like that. It's truly what they thought, right? And if you have at least the strength and the confidence within yourself to say, man, I am not following this narrative. I'm going to run against the grain, right? Against everything that's out there, right? Sometimes it comes at a fault, but then you can at least look at it for yourself and just take the information in and make your own decisions from it. Instead of saying, no, I have to do this because all these things that these people are saying is going to come down and I'm going to have this ruined life if I don't do it. It's not true. Don't listen to other people. Listen to yourself. And yeah, I can absolutely blame people for getting massively into debt, even if they were kids, right? Thing myth, as long as you aren't an alcoholic. Okay. By the time you get to the end of waivers, okay. Uh, you think the SEC is going to pass the Bitcoin ETF? I don't know. I have no idea. I mean, I have no idea what they're going to do with all that stuff. I mean, probably. If they do that, then they can start putting more rules and regulations and stuff like that on it. So I don't know, probably. If you on this chat and not working, you're okay and acting broke. All right. Thanks for all your information and insight, Simons. Greetings from Sandy, Oregon. Well, right on. Nice to have a local on here. Thank you. Fast food is legit trash. Homegrown sweet corn is the best. Just peel and eat. Don't even need to cook it or put anything on it. I never understood why gardens won't add value to home, but a pool will. Well, it's because a garden has to be maintained. Well, I guess a pool does too. But, a pool can get maintained by an individual stopping by, once a week or once every other week or something like that. But a garden has to be tended every single day. So you have to have the garden within you, right? I mean, I guess you could pay somebody to say, hey, plant my garden for me, and I want to walk around and look at my garden that I paid somebody else to grow. But I don't understand the point of that when you could just go to a farmer's market, I mean, the whole point of the garden is that you do it yourself, right? Depends on how many times you've been divorced. I witnessed a few train wreck weddings. Fear the F out of me. I heard a story one time, just not too long ago, where a couple got married, and I didn't. It was a conversation that other people were having, but in this conversation, they were talking about the couple, and the woman was describing the way she felt the day she got married, and she said that night she knew it wasn't going to work, and I went, what in the world happened that led you all the way up to getting married and knowing that night that it wasn't going to work? Like, what happened? Like, whose expectations were being met by this wedding? Right? I mean, like, I heard of that happen, and I'm like, what? Like, that actually occurs, you know? But yeah, I mean, there's people out there who really conduct themselves in such a way that they were either pleasing their parents or, somebody else out there, and were too afraid to say anything different, and they ended up putting themselves in a position in which the night that they were married, they knew that it wasn't going to work out. And I was just like, oh my gosh, this is the way people conduct themselves, right? It's not living true, authentic, or being aware, even being aware of your own thoughts. You're living a conscious life. That's how problems like that occur. And then now, that dude might not have known. Like, he was like, man, I just married the best woman in the entire world. I'm so excited about this. And that's the belief that he put into it. And the evidence shows, because she married me. And now he goes and puts all this time and effort and energy into it. 5 years later, she can't handle it anymore, and she leaves him. And he was just like, what in the world? But she knew the entire time, And so, I mean, same thing with the guy who might get married and say, like, man, I'm going to dedicate my life to this woman, but it's not like I'm going to remain faithful or anything. I mean, I'm still going to have fun on the side and do whatever. Well, then why did you even do it? Like, what was the point? If that's the mindset that you had, you shouldn't have done it to begin with. And, but it happens, right? All right. Oh. Okay, Simon, if you were asked to teach a class at a university near you, would you take it? Uneducated Economist 101? Yes. Yeah, I would absolutely do that. I would love to share my research, my understanding, my information, and my opinions. I would love to do that. One of the things that I found, especially as the more I study economics, is that there is a lot of views, and you can have counter views, and there's no way that anybody could say this is how the economy works, right? It doesn't go like that. It's like saying, I could tell you how everybody thinks, right? It's just like it doesn't go down like that. There are some economic forces that take place out there that have cause and effects due to whether it's political environment or environmental, like weather environment kind of things. There's all kinds of impacts that then start messing with the economic forces that are out there. Once you understand the economic forces and you kind of have an understanding of like financial systems and trades and stuff like that, then you really start to take on an opinion of your own that can be very different from other people's opinions of it. And that's what I would like to teach, is that, hey, there's economic forces out there, and you have to try to kind of compile all this information and understand how those economic forces are going to impact all this stuff. And so that's the reason why it depends, like, on where you're at in the view that you have, because it's going to be completely different for everybody, right? Again, like being out on the river, being in the freighter, or being on the skiff, completely different actions that are going to be taking place, even though you're all basically looking at the same information. So yeah, I would love to teach a class. I would love to teach that kind of philosophy. Love these illustrations. Eat your heart out, Gammon. Yeah, I love George Gammon's whiteboard videos. That's what really got me to, because I don't know if a lot of you know this, I was the first one to give George Gammon a shout out. And it's the reason why I was even to become friends with George, is simply from that one shout out that I had done. And, I'm just scrolling through my YouTube, watching videos, and I come across George Gammon, and I'm like, wow. I mean, this guy is good. He's like really, really good. He's got these whiteboard videos going on, and he's like, he's got really good information. And I was surprised. He had like quite a few videos out. He'd been putting them out for a while. Most of it had to deal with like real estate. And, he had a few hundred subscribers at the time. And I gave him a shout out and told, like, I had maybe, 4,000 or 5,000 subscribers. And I just told him, told the viewers, I'm like, gosh, you guys got to go check out this dude, George Gammon. He's really good. I mean, he's got these whiteboard videos, and he's hardly even noticed. Man, you got to follow this guy. And he was just like, dude, thanks for the shout out. Why don't you come and do an interview like on my show? And we kind of just became friends. And his channel just took right off. Like, I mean, I was like, what in the world? Like, he took off on a rocket ship, you know, and I'm like, holy crap, you know? And like I said, I mean, I met him before he was ever popular on YouTube or anything else. It was just like, again, it's the parallels, right? It's the parallels that you land on. I found him, I didn't have to give him a shout out, right? I mean, I could have just said, like, wow, that's a cool YouTuber and just moved on. But I was just like, nah, I'm going to give this guy a shout out. I think he deserves some credit. Right? Just by that one little shout out completely changed everything about my life. Right? I mean, all of a sudden I'm being invited to the Rebel Capitalist to go speak on stage. Right? And that was another thing. Like, I had it in my mind long before I started YouTube or anything else, I had it in my mind. I was just like, man, I would love to get on stage someday and speak in front of a group, just to have that experience. I didn't even know what it is that I wanted to talk about. I just wanted to have that experience of doing that. You know, I guess it would probably came from doing the bingo, like calling bingo and having that kind of audience. I wanted to have like a bigger audience and see what it would have been like to be on stage with a bigger audience. You know? And that was one of my goals in my mind that I had. And the other one was to meet Ron Paul. And the Rebel Capitalist in Houston, I just about met Ron Paul, but he was so surrounded by people and security and stuff, I just didn't want to go in there and intrude. But I got to speak on the same stage as Ron Paul to the same audience on the same day, right? So to me, that was pretty close. That was close enough to meeting him, right? I mean, as far as the experience of that goes, and all those things like took place, and I wasn't even trying to make that happen. Like, it just occurred, right? Even though subconsciously I made the right decisions that got me there, right? Say, hey, give that guy George Gammon a shout out. Say yes to the speaking engagement. Keep talking about the things about what's going on in lumber that are counter to everybody else is saying out there. And by doing all that, I found myself on stage, right? On the same stage with Ron Paul. You know, I mean, it was just like, how does this occur? Like, you know, if you go and try to do something like that, it would never have taken place. But you put it in your subconscious and believe that you can do it and take the steps that start leading you that way, and don't deny them, right? Allow the universe to provide it. Here it comes. And that's how it's really how it works. Get out of here, you little. Get out of here. Threw an M&M at it. All right. I'm sorry, I was yelling at the birds. That's what I'm yelling at. Average household debt. Okay, I guess staying liquid is good for the time being. I'm taking this guy's advice and going fishing. Always enjoy listening to your insights. Well, man, I need to go. I need to fish. I hope you catch some fish today, bro. Peace out to you. You are the company you keep. That's right. What YouTube channels do you listen to? I don't listen to a whole lot of YouTubers right now, simply because I was really trying to form my own philosophies, my own thoughts, my own theories, my own understanding of the economy. And I found that when I would listen to other YouTubers, even though the information was like really, really good stuff and probably information I should be listening to, I found that I would end up sounding and talking a lot like these YouTubers that I was following. Like, I was kind of mimicking a lot of what they were saying, or parroting, you know, a lot of what they were saying. And so I didn't want to do that. Like, I really wanted to know that I was doing this YouTube thing, this you know, the information, the thoughts, everything that I wanted for this channel. I wanted to make sure that it was authentic to me and not just regurgitating somebody else's information. So that was the reason why I cut a lot of them out. Like, I just stopped listening to a lot of the guys out there. And again, it wasn't like because I didn't like them. It was because I was really just trying to do my own thing. And I think it worked. You know, I mean, it's working anyway for me. Now, there is just one YouTuber that I'm really following right now, or that I, you know, look forward to the new posts that they put, and that's Aaron Doughty, right? You know, it's like a guy that I've been, you know, I brought up quite a few times in the past. I love his spiritual awakening, the expanding his consciousness, the explaining of like a lot of the stuff that I've even been talking about here, he's very much influencing a lot of my thoughts and, you know, what I'm trying to put out here on the channel. And the thing that really got me like listening to him was that a lot of the things that he was experiencing about his life and starting his YouTube channel was happening, like as far as starting the YouTube channel was happening like at the same time I was doing it. And the things that he was experiencing and talking about experiencing with his YouTube channel, I was experiencing the exact same things, but I didn't know him at the time, right? And so when I found this channel and, you know, the spiritual awakeningness and, you know, expanding consciousness, I had no idea about any of these concepts. Like I've heard a lot of them in the past and had a lot of them even, you know, just had those own theories just, you know, anyway. When he started like explaining a lot of stuff, I was like, man, this makes so much more sense, right? And and so I found like Aaron Doughty's information and his videos that he puts out are I resonate very well with it, and I really enjoy watching his channel. So so I like that's pretty much the only YouTuber right now that I'm really like actually following, you know, if there was any. So, and if you listen to his stuff, you're gonna find that I actually mimic and parrot a lot of what he says, just because I really enjoy his thoughts and philosophies that he has. The Subtle is legit world on there. Okay, what happened to the price of bonds when the stock market crashes? What will happen to the price of bonds when the stock market crashes? Well, it's kind of interesting how the bond market used to work counter to the stock market. The stock and bonds would like if one went down, the other one would go up. If one went up, the other one would go down, right? And it was kind of the idea of like, if the stock market is going to go down, then you need to put your money into a safe place while the stock market is down. And you get at least somewhat of a return by going into the bonds. So then people would move into the bond market because of that. And then the same thing going the other way. Like if bonds are going down, then you're probably going to want to put it into something that might be going up. And so money would flow out of the bond market and move it into the stock market. Yeah. So that's kind of like how traditionally people would expect it to happen. But things had changed over the last few years where the bond market and the stock market were moving together. Like the bond market was going up in value and the stock market was going up in value. And those two were working together, which doesn't really happen that often, right? I mean, at least typically that's not the way it would occur. So it would have to be like, why is it that the stock market is selling off, right? And then why would they want to be moving into bonds at that time, right? Now that's the kind of the big question that comes from it, is that people would typically want to get out of the stock market, move into the bond market, but would there be a situation in which that they wouldn't want to be doing that? And now I think that yes, that would occur, right? As we come into a liquidity issue and people are attempting to pay off their debts, right? Because I think that's going to be the biggest issue, is that there's so much debt obligation out there and not enough dollars to pay it off, right? I mean, that's pretty easy to understand. Now, if you start to tighten up the liquidity, then new loan issuance starts to tighten up, and that's where the people are getting their money from, is from that new loan issuance. Now, if you don't have new loan issuance, you have to deal with the currency that's already in existence and trying to get a hold of that currency to pay off your debts. Now, if that's the situation that's coming, that's the liquidity crisis that I feel is about ready to occur in 2024, right? Now, again, like whether or not that happens, who knows? If that is to occur and you have a liquidity issue of trying to get a hold of dollars to pay off your debts, you're going to sell off everything. You're going to sell off bonds, you'll sell off crypto, you'll sell off stocks, you'll sell off gold, you'll sell off whatever it is that you can in order to get the dollars you need to pay your debts. And that's why I feel like the bond market, stock market, gold, everything is going to be traveling together as the liquidity crisis drives people into cash, trying to find as much cash as they can, selling off whatever it is they can to get the cash to pay off their debts. Whether or not that occurs, I don't know. But that's what I think is going to happen, and that's going to be where your buying opportunity is going to take place. All right, Perry Halls, thank you for the $4.99. Very cool of you. Warren Buffett has half in stocks in Apple now. They're a bank too. I appreciate your perspective. I'm working on my understudying of the very things you speak about and about the mind interpreting incoming information from our surrounding universe. And that's And that's one of the reasons why I was able to do the things on YouTube that I am, like with the understanding of the economy and being able to speak about it. It's because I spent a long time before I ever got on YouTube trying to figure out how the economy was operating, right? Different aspects of it. It took me a very long time to do it. When I started the YouTube channel, I still, at the time, was very much like even today, still trying to figure out what is happening, right? But when I started the YouTube channel, something different started to occur, right? Is that I was taking this information and putting it out there for people to hear, but then I was studying more information because people kept asking me questions like, what is? And I'm like, that's a great question. And so I was going to do research to answer a lot of these questions that were coming up as I was doing videos, and it just started guiding me down the path that I was leading, going down. It was just like, here's the next thing. And it's almost like the viewers themselves taught me, right? And in fact, I say that a lot, that, you guys taught me a hell of a lot more than I'll ever teach you, right? And I think that was it too. It was just like literally trying to do the research to come up with video content, just kept leading me down to the next question to answer, and it just that's how I ended up here, with some of the theories and ideas that I do have. How long have we been out here? Whoa, we've been out here over 3 hours. Oh my gosh, guys, I'm gonna go. All right, I'm gonna give it just a few more minutes here, and then I'm gonna go hang out with the family. We're gonna go climb up Tillamook Head here this afternoon. Did you grow up in Oregon? Have you ever considered moving to a more tax-friendly state? No, I grew up in Oregon, and I never really considered moving anywhere, because anywhere that I have ever traveled, I thought, man, this would be an awesome place to live. But then I get home and I realize I really, really love my home. It's the people here are friendly, the place is clean, the crime rate is low. Like, I cannot think of any other place that I'd really want to be, other than the fact that it's so expensive, right? If that wasn't the case, then it would be absolutely perfect. But then again, if it was cheaper to live here, then we wouldn't have some of the conditions that we have. So it kind of sucks to be in this affluent area now, because it's going to be very difficult on my kids. But I grew up here when it wasn't like this, right? So it's a much different, like, condition, I think it is, like, being here. No, I wouldn't consider moving for tax reasons. Not yet, anyway. If I had more money, maybe. I don't make that much money, so it's just like, I mean, I can, I guess, at times, but it's not like I have, like, hundreds of millions of dollars or even hundreds of thousands of dollars to worry about. So I just don't worry about taxes that much. Not yet. Don't know if I blame kids for believing that college is worth the expense, but I do blame them for spending 3 years getting drunk and sleeping in. Those fools should pay their debts. If you can't blame them for making a bad decision, then we should not be educating them. That's it. Like, we should educate them and then blame them for the decisions that they make, right? But if we were like, oh man, we didn't give you a good education, yeah, we should really, like, take care of you for that. No, like, that's our fault, right? I mean, that's not the way it should go down. We shouldn't be educating them if we can't blame them. So, have you ever heard that term? I thought I taught you better than that. Marriage is a thing of the past. I think the future will be polygamy. Yeah, I don't know. I think the idea of marriage is a good idea. I think it's a good idea for the two people who are involved, who respect each other, who love each other, and who are willing to do the things in life it is to help each other, succeed. Right? I think it's a great concept. Right? I think you can do it without government involvement. Right? I don't think that's necessary. I think one of the bigger downfalls for the idea of marriage amongst men is that legally they will be held liable for future payments, right? And that makes it very difficult for people to be trusting in that sense. So um, I think government should be out of it. Like, I don't think government should be involved in marriage, and therefore there's no liability as far as legalities go or anything like that. So once you kind of take that out of the mix of it, then it's just a personal like feeling, and belief of what it is that this means to you. It doesn't have anything else involved. So if you're talking about like not being legally married by the government, I'm cool with that, because it's just a corporate contract anyway. It doesn't mean anything to the feelings that you have towards the other person, right? It's just whether or not you're going to be legally obligated after that. And at that point, yeah, I think government should be out of it. Like, I don't think government should be involved in anything, right? Like, the only thing that I think government should be involved with is like border protection, like of our actual borders, not policing the world, but protection of our borders. I think that government should be involved with say interstate commerce, right? Because each state, I think, is individual and should be making up their own rules and laws, under the Constitution of the United States. I mean, these are some of the behaviors that I think would be very changing to our society, and had government not so much intrusion, I think that there would be a big difference inside of it, and especially the way that people behave. So. All right. I'm hoping individuals pay their debts so when downturn comes, I can buy their assets. Just joking, or maybe not. I'm not joking. I mean, that's like this world is not fair, right? And there's no point for you to not take advantage of a situation when it comes up because you don't feel that it's fair. Well, the world isn't fair, right? It's not. It's never gonna be fair, right? And to sit around saying I'm gonna conduct my life so that everything is fair means that you're gonna get deprived, is what it means, right? It's survival of the fittest. This is like, I mean, if you were a lion, would you be sharing with that other lion over there? No, you wouldn't. It would be all yours and you would fight him for it, right? Even if you couldn't even consume it all, it's still all yours. And that's the way naturally we behave, right? I mean, it's survival of the fittest. It's not exactly like pleasant. And there's people out there who are like, no, we should be kumbaya and all be in peace and stuff like that. That's great. That's a great philosophy. I'm totally down for that. It ain't going to happen. It's not the way instinctual behavior is. And to think that you have to operate against your instincts means that you're not going to live an authentic real life, right? And so people shouldn't be delusional like that. Go for it all. It's all yours. You're a lion. Take it. I saw Ron Paul. It was amazing. Yeah. Ron Paul's a great speaker. It's even more so when it's in person. Don't hero worship. Yeah, that's it. Wow, 3 hour wide. Yeah, I know. I can't even speak now. 3 hour live stream. It's one of the longest I think I've ever done. How do you spell that name? Aaron Doughty. 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 And it's funny because, like, I've turned a few people onto his YouTube channel, and most people come back to me and like, bro, I can't do it, man. I can't relate with this guy. And it's funny because, like, most people actually come back to me and say that, and I'm thinking, I don't get it. Like, I mean, he is like a little high strung and, I mean, kind of a little bit hyperactive kind of thing going, and something like that going, but like, I think he's cool. Like, I mean, I was just like, I don't necessarily think that he'd be somebody that I would like hang out with, like, hey man, let's, like, just go hang out. But I mean, I think his message is cool. I think what he's doing is really cool. And I think, like the experience that he shares with the development of his YouTube channel, I like resonate with very closely with. I was like, man, that's a lot of the exact same experiences that I was having. So, I like the guy. I like his information and I enjoy it. And like I said, but a lot of people that I've like, suggested his channel to come back to me and are like, dude, I can't do it. It's just like, it's not, I'm not getting it, man. All right, my experience, the best way to learn something is to teach it. It is. It absolutely it is. I mean, in fact, that's how I I don't do it too because I show a lot of people like the new hires at work. I like to show them how you know orders work and special orders and all that other stuff. What I think is really neat is when I show somebody how to do something and then I see them showing somebody else exactly the way I showed them how to do it, right? And I think, yes, nice, right? And that's like some people get like really kind of uppity, like kind of get really weird about it. It's like, no, 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 they don't let them show you, let me show you, or whatever. I've done the same thing. I was just like, man, don't let anybody else show you how to do this. Let me show you because I do the most of it and I know how to really do it, right? And so I do the same thing, right? To tell people, hey, don't take information from those people yet. Take it from me first, right? And everybody kind of does this thing, but I'm in a position in which that I have to deal with most of this, right? Most of the orders, whatever, right? And other people come in and only have to deal with it part of the time. So since I'm the one who deals with it most of the time, I want people to do it my way, right? And so, whether that's cocky or arrogant or whatever, so be it. That's just the way it is. Now, when it comes to somebody showing somebody else how to do something, I have seen many times where it will be shown improperly. And then next thing you know, the whole system is starting to fall apart because nobody understands what's going on here and why it's not working out right. It's because it was shown improperly to begin with, and then the next person shows the next person improperly, and it just keeps going on like that. Right? So this is really where, like, I feel that when you're going to learn something or you're going to teach somebody something, right, it's about understanding it to a level in which that they can show it again, right? To be like the moment that somebody's wanting to see something on the computer, I stand behind them, right? And I'm like, go ahead, log in. All right, hit up, whatever, go and hit this tab. And I'll like literally stand there with my arms crossed, will not touch the computer, will not pick anything up. And I will make them do all the operations on everything. Because if you show them, like, here, let me show you, and you grab the computer and you start typing, they won't remember. They will not remember. But if they went down the path themselves, they will, right? And so it's part of like understanding of training other people is that they have to put their hands on it right away. You can show them like the first time, hey, let me show you how this is done. Okay, now here, you take it, and from now on, you're going to be handling this, right? And yeah, you're going to mess it up a few times, right? Because you got to learn how it works or whatever. But once you do, then you'll have it. You won't have anybody else like needing anybody else to do it. So it's training is a very interesting thing. I've done quite a bit of that, showing other people. All right, guys, 3:20. I'm done. I gotta go. It was so awesome hanging out here with you guys. Thank you so much for being here. We got 129 of you that made it for the 3 hours, almost 3.5 hours I've been out here talking. 257 likes. Absolutely awesome that you guys hit that like button. I can always, always appreciate you liking the video, especially when we're doing these live streams. And thank you very, very, very much for the support of the Uneducated Economist with the super chats and the questions. This is how we do it, guys. We figured this stuff out so that we can be making the best decisions for ourselves. I think that's really important to understand, especially when you're taking in information from many sources that might have contradictory information. It's all information, and it's all about the meaning we give it. It's all about the beliefs that we have, and it's all about the evidence that we put towards those meanings and those beliefs. Right? So, again, all information is good information. It's just about how we perceive that information and the meaning that we put behind it. All right. Uneducated Economist. You guys let me know.